A very good morning to all our guests and all our attendees. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. You are all welcome. We're supposed to have started at exactly 10 o'clock. There's something that's being finalized, and Ms. Busu will join us shortly. You are at the right place, the right platform. Please bear with us. Not long, we'll resume with the session. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I was trying to get us a national anthem or the African Union song to be played for us, but technically doesn't look like that's what's going to happen this morning. Thank you so much for your patience. Those of you who are already online and have been in waiting. My name is Penny Libiane, and I'm going to be your moderator this morning for this conversation that we are going to have. I would like to welcome you on behalf of MRM for this Africa Day Dialogue webinar that we are having today. It's going to be a short but long, intense, fascinating conversations that we're going to have. So have your water close to you, and all your thoughts and notes that you would like to share today. So today we're going to be getting into this conversation as we take a moment to reflect. May 25th having been Africa Day, and I think all of us, because we are in different spaces, we know that it's a day where we take a moment to reflect and observe the formation of the African Union back then to where we are right now as this beautiful continent. So this Africa Day dialogue really is going to be about the conversations that I'm sure that all of you have been briefed about. It's trying to get a dialogue about the current status and place we are in as a continent. We have so many things that we need to tackle, starting with our first panel conversation, migration and its impact on South Africa. So it's us, South Africa, reflecting on how things are happening in our country based on migration and that impact of that. And a little bit later on, we'll also get into a conversation on human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism. And we will look at some resolutions and conclusions a little bit later on. So I'm looking forward to having all of you engage in this conversation. I'm looking forward to all of you participating in this conversation and contributing as best as you can. I am sure working closely with the Moral Regeneration Movement, which is always trying to harness the moral wealth of our nation. You do that in your respective roles and positions daily, not just on Africa Month. Migration and its impact on South Africa is the first conversation that we're going to get into. So let me take this time to get on into the program formally, and we get our welcome address so we can get going. I'm sure you've heard a little bit earlier on from Mr. Ronnie Masilela, who is from MRM in Mpumalanga, the province. He is a coordinator. So let me hand over to him to give us the opening remarks.
A very good morning to your good self, Ms. Penny Libiane. Thank you so much for the opportunity given to me to formally welcome all the great attendees of this great session. I want to extend my greetings to the chairperson of MRM nationally, Father Smangaliso Mkhacho in absentia, the COO, Mr. Seth Mazibugo. I also want to greet all the moderators, the speakers for this session, all the partners and sponsors, the attendees and guests across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As indicated, you have correctly coined it, Ms. Libiane, when you were doing your remarks for this session. It is a very brief but very impactful session. It remains relevant even today that we speak about issues in the continent of Africa which is home to 54 countries, and home to 1.55 billion people with diverse cultures, languages, spiritual beliefs, and many other things. We are rich in many fronts as the continent Africa. There are people who would die to be in Africa for many other things, including minerals and so on and so on. So we are gathered here today under the theme that says the good, the bad, and the future of Africa. Now, we will be taking a frank and open discussion assisted by our speakers and our moderators to look into various topics. Let us dissect them honestly, frankly, and knowing that we are discussing issues that affect our day-to-day living. And if we make a mistake or we hide something, it will affect us and history will judge us harshly. Why are we saying this? Is because of the fact that the resolutions and the insights, the recommendations that will come out of this session today will form part of a report, MRM's national report, which will be submitted to the National Summit, which will be held later on this year, 2025. The same will then be tabled before the National Assembly, the portfolio committee, which is responsible for issues of moral regeneration. Ladies and gentlemen, please gear yourself up to discuss and to hear a lot on human rights in the continent, the good, the bad, and the future in Africa or Africa with regards to human rights. Also, let's go into township economy. We know that the economy is run by small businesses, and what has changed? What is it that has gone wrong? What is it that must be amplified in the continent to make sure that our township economy thrives and people have jobs and have economic activities? People run their small businesses and they are successful. People are subsidized, are funded, and they know how to run businesses, to manage businesses, to kill a culture that says, if my father had two shops, for instance, and my father passes on, they go to the grave with the two shops. No one will be able to take up from where my father left off. So those are some of the things that we must be able to discuss as we venture into township economy. We will be looking also at human settlements and urban inclusion. We'll also be looking at social cohesion and migration. So those are some of the key topics that we must expect to deliberate on and to hear from various speakers as they have prepared for this special session. With those words, I want to wish all of us the best, and you are all welcome from your different corners, even if you were not acknowledged by my good self. If you are not acknowledged in the beginning, you are truly and duly acknowledged, and you are all welcome. Please feel free. This is our Africa. We are Africans, and Africa is ours. Let us feel proud to be in Africa. Let us feel proud to initiate things in Africa. Let us shape the direction that Africa must take, because it's us who must then initiate things and shape the direction that Africa must take. The direction of Africa today, the direction of Africa in the future. 5 years from now, we must look at Africa and see our contribution to what Africa would have been in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and in 20 years' time. It starts with us in this session today. So with those words, Ms. Libiane, I want to truly thank you for the opportunity and thank MRM for putting this together and all the stakeholders that have joined forces to make sure that Africa changes from today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those opening remarks. It's also a little bit of a somber day for us, Africans, because we also take a moment to reflect and remember the life and times of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who passed away yesterday, who is a Pan-Africanist, author and activist coming from Kenya. So to all our African Kenyan brothers who might be joining us online, who are in solidarity with us in the journey of building the Africa we want, we would like to also, send our condolences. As a prolific author, obviously, who speaks to some of the issues that we're going to touch on today, such as rejecting English, to preserve cultural identity, decolonizing the mind, which is one of his books in 1986. A play that he did in 1977 that critiqued social injustice, leading, of course, to him being imprisoned and showcasing his political courage. And there's a university named, obviously, a department rather at the University of Nairobi, named after him to focus on African literature and shaping post-colonial theory. So he's a giant on the continent. So we meet to have this conversation today, 4 days after we celebrate Africa Day. And as we've aptly themed today's conversation, the good, the bad, I don't want to say the ugly, but the future of what the continent has in store for us. I'm quite excited to hear what some of our speakers are going to be sharing today, the good, the bad, and the future of Africa. And in real essence, it's all in our hands, if we're to quote the words of Dr. Nelson Mandela. So let me ask on Juanita Williams from the Western Cape, who is the MD and editor of allafrica.com, to give us a keynote address.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not the MD, unfortunately. I'm just the managing editor of allafrica.com. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the discussion in honor of Africa Day, which, as Ms. Libiani said, it was on May 25. Whether you're tuning in from your home, your office, or even a busy coffee shop, I want you to know how grateful we are to have you with us. Today is about all of us, our stories, our struggles, and most importantly, our dreams for Africa's future. I was invited by the model regeneration movement, and I tried really hard not to make this a lecture. Instead, let's have a real conversation about where we are as a continent, especially here in South Africa. Our theme, the good, the bad, and the future of Africa, says it all. We're here to celebrate, to be honest about our challenges, and to think together about what's next. As was said before, we've got some seriously big topics on the table: human rights, the township economy, human settlement and urban inclusion, social cohesion, and migration. Let's dive in and hopefully leave today feeling inspired to do our bit for Africa. The good, what's working and why we should be proud. Let's start with the positives. Sometimes we get so caught up in what's wrong that we forget what's going right. Human rights and the progress we can't ignore. We've come a long way. Not too long ago, basic rights were a dream for many. Now, South Africa is one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. We've got laws like the Refugees Act that on paper are designed to protect the most vulnerable among us. Across Africa, more and more people are standing up for their rights, and governments are being held accountable. Sometimes slowly, but the needle is moving. On township economy, that hustle and that heart. If you want real entrepreneurship, don't look at fancy boardrooms. Look at our townships: spaza shops, hair salons, street food vendors, mechanics, and more. These aren't just businesses, they're lifelines. They keep families afloat and communities buzzing. Migrants and South Africans work side by side, making things happen with limited resources. Did you know migrants contribute up to 5% of South Africa's GDP, mostly through informal trade? That's huge. Human settlement and urban inclusion, making space for everyone. Our cities are growing fast. People are moving from all over, rural areas, neighboring countries, you name it. And yes, it's tough, but it also means our cities are alive with new ideas, cultures, and energy. In many places, you'll find migrants joining in cultural activities, helping out at community events, and adding to the rich mix that makes South Africa unique. At our best, we live the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because we are. At our worst, we see the world wheel out those words when it's convenient. But we've seen communities come together when times get tough, helping neighbors regardless of where they're from. As Ms. Labiani said, I live in Cape Town, I live in Woodstock. I've seen both sides, and I'm sure you have too. My neighborhood is gentrified, which means that many residents were forced out of their homes by high rental and rates costs. This led to several illegal occupations, and I live near one of them, Sissy Ghoul House, at the site of the former Woodstock Community Hospital. The house was named after the first Black woman to be elected to the Cape Town City Council in 1951, an advocate for justice. It's been more than a decade since the occupation began, and one of the most painful things to see is the hierarchy within the poor community. But even though it's not always easy, there are so many stories of locals and migrants working together, supporting each other, and proving that unity is possible. The bad. Let's be honest about our struggles. Now let's talk about the tough stuff. We can't fix what we don't face. There are gaps in human rights and there are gaps between life and law. It's one thing to have great laws, it's another to see them in action. Too often, migrants and refugees face discrimination, red tape, and sometimes outright abuse. Xenophobic violence has taken hundreds of lives in the past 20 years. But that's not who we want to be. The informal sector is a blessing, as I said earlier, but it's also fragile. Many workers have no contracts, no benefits, and no safety net. When jobs are scarce, tensions rise. So the Africans worry about losing out to migrants who might accept lower wages. It's a real concern, especially with unemployment being so high. Our cities are also under pressure. Housing, water, electricity, healthcare, everything is stretched thin. Informal settlements are growing, and many municipalities just can't keep up. Sometimes undocumented migrants get blamed for these problems, but the truth is our systems need a serious upgrade to serve everyone better. When resources are tight, it's easy to look for someone to blame. Political leaders sometimes point fingers at migrants, and social media can make things worse. Xenophobia isn't just a word, it's a wound. It divides us, makes us suspicious of each other, and holds us back as a nation. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about the role of South African media, especially seeing as I work in that sector. Before we talk about solutions, let's pause and consider the role of the media in all of this. Because let's face it, the story we tell ourselves as a nation is shaped by what we see, hear, and read every day. So the African media has shown us stories like that of Abdi, a Somali shopkeeper in Kailicha, Cape Town, who not only keeps his doors open late for the community, but also gives groceries on credit to pensioners. These stories remind us that migrants are not just competing for resources, they're also giving back and investing in our communities. Somali and Ethiopian shopkeepers have opened spaza shops in areas like Kailicha and Alexandria, often providing affordable goods and sometimes even extending credit. These stories highlight how, despite facing xenophobia and threats, many migrants are creating jobs for South Africans and helping stabilize food prices in underserved areas. After the 2019 xenophobic attacks, SABC News ran a series of interviews with community leaders and migrants in Durban who sat down together to find solutions. These stories of dialogue and reconciliation, broadcast into homes across the country, show us that healing is possible and that the media can lead the way. When fake news spreads on WhatsApp or Facebook, organizations like Africa Check step in to set the record straight. Their investigations, often shared by most media outlets, remind us that the facts matter and that we shouldn't let fear or rumors drive our policies or our relationships. Media outlets like Groundup have reported on the daily struggles of asylum seekers trying to access healthcare or register their children for school. By telling these stories, the media shines a light on the gaps in our system and pushes for real change. The media doesn't just report the news. It can help us see each other's humanity, celebrate our shared victories, and hold us all accountable to our highest ideals. Too often, though, the headlines focus on the drama, the crime, the conflict, the us versus them. But migration is a complex story with many sides. The media can do so much more than just report the latest crisis. Imagine if, instead of just covering xenophobic attacks or service delivery protests, our journalists also told the stories of migrants who are building businesses, volunteering in their communities, or working in our hospitals and schools. I want to add working in the media here because All Africa's editorial staff consists of talented people from across the continent, editors and technical staff from Zimbabwe, because no matter what your opinion of the Mugabe government is, the emphasis on a quality education meant good things for a few generations. We also have a lawyer. We also had a lawyer from Cameroon who has his South African citizenship, and a team of Kenyan technical staff, because of course, I mean, it's Kenya. We would have technical staff based there. Yesterday, Facebook reminded me that 7 years ago, Mamadou Gassama hit the news. Who's that? Maybe it'll be easier to remember the so-called Malian Spider-Man, as he was named. Gassama climbed up 4 stories to save a child hanging from a balcony in Paris. Now, France's bad reputation with migrants is well known, so it wasn't surprising that President Emmanuel Macron immediately said the undocumented young man, and I quote, was going to be regulated as soon as possible. And I also invited him to apply for naturalization. He was also invited to join the fire department. Now, where his story ended up, we could probably discuss later. I've looked it up and I've seen some of the things that he's been doing with his life since that amazing event 7 years ago. It's a shame, though, that we have to be so exceptional, go viral, do superhuman feats even before we get that kind of response. I have the link and I can share it if anyone wants to watch what that event 7 years ago looked like. And I'll also share a link with an interview with Kasama. So for South Africa, highlighting the positive contributions of migrants, like the fact that they add up to 5% to the country's GDP every year, the media can help change the narrative from fear to opportunity. When people see real examples of migrants and South Africans working together, it chips away at stereotypes and builds understanding. The best journalism gives a platform to those who often go unheard. Migrants, refugees, and people living in informal settlements don't always have access to the microphones or cameras. The media can and should seek out their voices. Let's hear from the single mother running a spaza shop in Delft, the Mozambican artist sharing her experiences, the Nigerian teacher mentoring school children, or the Langa community leader mediating between locals and newcomers. When the media shares these stories, it reminds us all of our shared humanity. It also helps policymakers and the public understand the real challenges and hopes of people on the ground, not just the stats. We all know how quickly rumors and fake news spread, especially on social media. In times of tension, misinformation about migrants can fuel panic and violence. The media has a responsibility to fact check, to challenge myths, and to provide accurate information. For example, when someone claims that migrants are taking all the jobs, the media can dig into the data and show the real picture, that migrants may take up jobs that South Africans don't want, or that they create businesses that employ local people. By being a trusted source of facts, the media can calm fears and help people make informed decisions. This is especially important when political leaders use migration as a scapegoat. This is especially important when political leaders use migration as a scapegoat for deeper problems like unemployment or poor service delivery. The media isn't just about reporting, it's also about creating spaces for conversation. Talk radio, community radio, and newspapers, online forums. These are places where people can share their experiences, ask questions, and learn from each other. The media can host debates that include both locals and migrants, experts and ordinary citizens, young people and elders. When we talk to each other instead of about each other, it's much easier to find common ground. The media can help break down the us and them mentality and encourage real dialogue about how to build stronger, more inclusive communities. Remember, one of the media's most important jobs is to hold leaders accountable. When government promises to fix the asylum system or invest in township infrastructure, the media should follow up. Are those promises being kept? Are resources reaching the people who need them? Are local officials listening to the concerns of both migrants and long-time residents? By shining a light on what's working and what's not, the media can push for better policies and more transparent governance. This is key to making sure our laws and plans actually improve people's lives. Finally, the media can celebrate what South Africa and Africa makes Africa and South Africa so special, our diversity. From music and food, festivals and sports, there are so many stories of people coming together across cultures. The media can showcase these moments, reminding us all that unity is possible and that our differences are a source of strength, not division. The media has the power to shape how we see ourselves and each other. If our journalists, editors, and broadcasters commit to telling the full, honest, and hopeful story of migration and inclusion, they can help us move from fear to understanding, from division to unity. So let's challenge our media to be part of the solution because a better Africa needs better stories. But what now? What about the future? What can we actually do? How do we move from problems to solutions? In one word, action. We can make human rights real for everyone. We need to close the gap between the rights we promise and the reality people live. This means making sure our laws are actually enforced, not just written down. Fighting corruption in the immigration and asylum systems. Giving people real ways to regularize their status and contribute openly to society, and then protecting women, children, and vulnerable groups, no exceptions. Let's talk about township business and supporting that hustle. Providing microloans, training, and access to markets. We need to encourage partnerships between South Africans and migrants. There's room for everyone. We need to make it easier for informal businesses to become formal so workers get the protections they deserve. And we need to crack down on employers who exploit undocumented workers and South African workers and drive down wages for everyone. We need to plan for people and not just numbers. Our cities need a plan, not just hope. Investing in infrastructure, housing, water, electricity, and clinics. And we need to use real data to plan for future growth, not just guesswork. We need more than slogans, and we need real conversations. We need to host community dialogues, and that's where community radio and community newspapers and the government can partner to break down myths and fears. We need to celebrate our diversity. We need to support groups that help mediate conflicts and support those who feel left out. And we need to stand up to xenophobia every time, everywhere. I mean, people move for all sorts of reasons: war, poverty, dreams of a better life. And South Africa is a magnet for many in the region, and that's not going to change soon. By 2022, about 2.4 million immigrants were living in South Africa, almost 4% of our population. Most come from neighboring countries, and most are men. Many of them are here legally, but a significant number are not. Both groups contribute to our economy, but also put pressure on jobs and services, especially in places like Gauteng and the Western Cape. Migrants fill gaps in our economy,
Yeah.
and it can drive down wages. But what can we do about it? There's several things we have to work, and we have to fix our systems. We have to work with our neighbors. We need to cooperate with the SADC countries to manage migration flows, to share data, and to protect vulnerable people. We here
Awesome.
today, we meet here today with good intentions, and I would like, because I'm positive and because I'm optimistic about our future and the future of the continent, let's commit to action. Let's stand up for human rights, not just for ourselves but for everyone. Support local businesses and welcome the entrepreneurial spirit of our neighbors. Demand better planning and investment in our cities. Talk to someone from a different background, listen to their story, and then you can share your own. And challenge xenophobia wherever you see it. Silence is not an option. Africa's
Silence
story.
is not an option. Juanita, thank you so much. I don't mean to cut you. I
Oh,
just
no,
want to
that's
say that,
okay.
yeah, I just want you to conclude. because we've overrun by almost 15 minutes on your
Okay, I
budgeted
have.
time.
This is my conclusion. Africa's story is still being written. The good, the bad, and the future. They're all part of who we are. We've survived so much and we've achieved so much, but there's still work to do. Let's keep moving forward together. Let's build an Africa where everyone has a place, a purpose, and a future. That's the Africa I want. That's the Africa we all deserve. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for being part of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much there to Juanita Williams, managing editor of allafrica.com. It's one of my favorite websites, and it has been for years, bookmarked on my laptop. So I am so honored as well to be in the same space with you today. In this conversation, and all those key points that you made in your keynote, talking on the socio-political and economic landscape of Africa, including migration, young leadership, and of course, the role of African unity. I think from what she touched on, there's a lot of good stuff, and I'm happy that you started with that, and how you went about as well highlighting the bad that we have, and that is going to take action for us to commit to that, to be able to change things. We can't fix what we can't face. We have to talk to each other rather than talk about each other, and a better Africa needs better stories. And I definitely concur with you there, because I also come from the media space. Having community radio background is probably one of the reasons that affords me the opportunity to be able to sit here today and moderate this conversation. And in one way or the other as well, my children are of Zimbabwean heritage. My son is turning 20 today. so so I have a personal interest in a better Africa, because I can talk about the impact of migration 20 years ago in my own personal life, that involves raising children with someone from another country, how that impacts family values, the cultural differences that one had to experience, some of the things that I had to personally tackle from my own personal, family, but also being a public figure, some of the barrage I have to deal with on daily basis for having children of heritage from another country. So when you guys go to Parliament, MRM, I would like to go there. I have a few things I need to address on behalf, of mothers like myself and parents like myself in the country, on how we can actually cohesively rebuild morality in our country, and talk about what we can achieve as a continent collectively. So I'm excited, and thank you so much, Juanita, for all of that, because those personal stories are really what resonates and what can change the perceptions that we're dealing with on a daily basis. We're dealing with human beings, not numbers, and we have to prepare adequately to take us where we need to go. So I love that. And my brother, Roni Masilela, for opening up there from Pumalanga again as well. I'm from Bushbuckridge, so I fully understand that things start in the east. So thank you for the wisdom that you brought in earlier on for into the conversation. MRM Pumalanga coordinator, Roni Masilale, chatting to us earlier on. Okay, so we're going to get into a panel for this morning, and we're also going to be taking some comments that are coming through on our Facebook page. Yes, throughout the day, because the idea is for us to have a conversation. The beauty of technology is that we can sit here in Johannesburg, in the heart of Braamfontein, another cultural melting pot for young people who come to Wits University to come and pursue their education, and they come from all parts of the continent and have this conversation and beam it across the world and have this conversation. So thank you for all of you to participate this morning. So our first topic panel for today is migration and its impact on South Africa, and our keynote from Juanita really touched on a lot of some of those issues that we're dealing with. I think those of you are old enough, you recall one of the first xenophobic incidents happening I think it was 2006, 2007 there, and the shock and horror of how we all felt. And then at the same time, the level and the time and the turnaround of reaction from government, there was a lot of blaming and back and forth. But the question is, over the years, when such incidents happen, what have we learned? And in recent times, we've seen a situation with township economy, with puzzle shops as well in our communities. But the question still remains migration and its impact in South Africa. And I'm sure we all read up, besides personal anecdotes that we might have. And we all interact with different people in different spaces who their understanding of what that is based on policy or misunderstanding of policy, how it impacts us. The reality is South Africa has been in this position for the longest time. Migration in South Africa is very complex, both positive, both negative. It has consequences, and immigrants contribute significantly. But at the same time, there's some feelings of some level of erosion that they contribute to. People make examples of, CBDs like Johannesburg in the Western Cape, Durban, and things like that, to infrastructure. But what kind of conversations should we be having to address these challenges in making sure that we harness the economic power of migration and that we can be able to lead to a more thriving and diverse South Africa? And what are the key learnings that are out there? And how can we apply that and be able to build a better Africa? So with that said, I'd like to welcome my panelists who are joining me this morning. First, I have Dr. Alois S. Baleni, who is from the University of Johannesburg. He's going to talk on Africanism research. He will take us through that. And then we also going to be on the panel as well. We're going to have Ntando Denny, who is they're supposed to be from Progressive Forces, who's not able to join us. Fana John Tefu from the city of Johannesburg. Both Dr. Alois Baleni and Fana John Tefu from the city of Johannesburg, the property unit, are joining me, here where I am. And we also have Alberto da Cruz from Mozambique, a political scientist and economist. So I think let me start with Dr. Alois Baleni. Thank you for joining us. And how are you this morning? And happy Africa Month.
Great. Thanks and good morning to colleagues and everyone else. I thought that was going to be probably more theological, but I'm not so sure how to frame my talk and how much time I have. But I think there's a little question that has been just posed to me right now about what historical and structural issues have fueled intra-African migration, and how do these dynamics shape today's tensions or opportunities in integration? I think the context that one can actually approach this framing is to understand Africa from its pre-colonial history and colonial histories, and to where we are now, taking into account that what has happened obviously has been taking into account that what has happened obviously has been the colonial narrative that actually entrenched Africa, resulting in a lot of dispossession at a political level, resulting in economic injustices, even social injustices. So what is actually happening currently, you would find that a lot of migration, because the politics, the economic and the social aspect intersect in ways that then force people to migrate. And once people migrate, wherever they end as their destination, they tend to meet very hostile environments. And those hostile environments tend to turn into violence at times, forms of exclusion, identity exclusion, and all other forms of social and political exclusions. So I think that is how one can frame this question of how migration is actually shaped and what is happening in that aspect. And then, like I said, the politics of our own countries currently, you would find that our African states or countries are actually struggling politically in such a way that the citizens of those countries are not enjoying any citizenry. And you would find that they then tend to be silenced. We still have countries that would actually block or shut down what do you call this, social media platforms, so that citizens cannot actually connect and discuss issues that are affecting their being Africans or their being citizens. And at the end of the day, because there is no space to actually express anything around their own rights, they tend to then migrate to spaces that they think are going to give them alternatives, that are going to accept them. But when they get there, you would find that if they were to come to South Africa, for example, South Africa is on its own very unequal in terms of its own economy, and Black people are still trapped in poverty. So when you add another layer of poor people who are actually coming in looking for small opportunities, they tend to find themselves in confrontation with those that are already struggling for life. And at the end of the day, you would find that those tensions then tend to what we call xenophobia. And I think if I can reflect back to about 10 years ago when I did my master's, where I actually looked at the 2008 violence that had happened in Alexandra Township. And my findings actually were to the contrary, that that was not xenophobic. It was just a media way of framing that kind of an attack. Because if you were to ask those people that were actually being chased away, driven away from those spaces, and you ask them questions, what were these people saying when they were chasing you out of those spaces? You would find that they were saying, no, we are taking away their jobs, their housing challenges, and all those things. So if someone is being chased away because of an economic opportunity, that is not xenophobia. It's something that has to be addressed, that is structural in nature, and that's how the economy is actually shaped, that Black people still find themselves without much access to the economy. So when you add another layer of those that come and struggle in the same way, there's a tendency that violence is then going to erupt to try and drive out people in terms of their identity. And those that are non-South Africans then suffer in the process.
Thank you. I just wanted to you to expand, because the another conversation that comes is the term xenophobia, how media used it, and then there was a conversation about the term Afrophobia. From your experience and in your research, that framing obviously fueled a certain conversation and direction of how we deal with understanding migration and community, I guess, integration in some of those communities?
It is quite a contested term or a contested concept, because in an honest conversation, when locals are actually talking about non-locals, immediately, without giving a sense on what exactly are the issues, what immediately comes into effect is that those people are xenophobic. But if they are raising questions about housing challenges, for example, to say they don't have, the government is not able to provide them with enough housing facility, employment opportunities, for example, and they are saying, as locals or as South Africans, there are certain jobs that we think we are able to do, and there is no need for them for someone to hire someone who's non-South African. Let us just use that basic simple concept. You find that it is then shaped as xenophobia, but the question that remains unaddressed, and what I said even in my master's then, is that you drive out all these people that you are saying are a problem. If it is non-South Africans and you are saying they are the problem is structural. Even if you were to drive them away, on their own, it's going to be, locals are going to then turn into ethnic violence on their own. They are going to then say this is a Zulu space, this is a whatever space. But collectively, when there are others who are from outside, they will say they are the challenge. When those people are not there, then it becomes who then belongs here. So that perpetually does not come to an end. So the issue of saying whenever that issue is raised, then it's xenophobia, is not actually addressing the core and underlying problem.
All right. I think Bonang from Progressive Forces, yeah, raised their hand. Would you like to say something? Bonang?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. My name is Bonang Sepolwane. I'm from Progressive Forces. Firstly, I wanted to ask that we are here as Progressive Forces, though we are virtually, because I heard the chair saying we are not at the room, and then so that we can be acknowledged and also give our stand on this issue, as we as Progressive Forces, it's what we are looking at most of the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We will be giving you your 10. It's because earlier on we couldn't get confirmation. So thank you for updating us on that. And I like how you, Doctor, you touched on the role of the media, and when you also touch on what will happen if the migrants are not the ones, and well, the non-locals are not the ones. It does happen in certain areas where, you know, for example, if you go to Mpumalanga, people in Mpumalanga have a thing, and I'm putting you, Mr. Ronnie Malisela, on the spot, where they say, "Ama N4 ayahlupa." Recently, I was in Kuruman as well, and then you know, I was addressing a community, doing work with one of the mining companies, and people who are part of, like, for example, community business forums who are disruptive in the whole mining and business sector, and they say, "Batho ba ko Gauteng ba batla gore laola." You know, and the reality of that is, you're correct. Whatever you know, intervention or progress is brought into a community, so those are some of the excuses or language that's being used, because there are real structural problems that communities are facing, and those structural problems have impact on service delivery on daily basis. And I think from the city of Johannesburg, that Defana John Tefu, you deal with the property unit, the story of buildings being occupied in the city of Johannesburg, buildings collapsing, and yet again, and how those reports of those, when they come into the media, how as government, as a city, a lot of blame is on you. But what are the realities that you have to deal with? And when it comes to housing and urban development, it's a big challenge in Gauteng, and I'm sure Juanita also spoke about what was happening in the Western Cape, because, you know, in other parts of the country, migration affecting infrastructure planning and service delivery. It's very rapid in townships and even the cities. Talk to us about that.
Good morning, everyone. I've been asked a very difficult question, but I will try from my utmost best ability. But what is important is that we need to go back to the history and understand the migration. And then we also need to take, especially when we're celebrating the Africa Day, things that we need to look at. We need also to remember the Geneva Convention in the 1800s, how they invaded Africa and how they divided Africa according to the European or the Western the Western countries known as G8. Our problem starts there. But however, as Africans, we've been migrating throughout the continent. And to an extent, some of the Zulus, they might be shocked that they originate from Tanzania, some of them. So as much, I think last year or early this year, King Mrs. Zulu was celebrating with another king from the north also. So generally, the issue of migration, what was causing the problem and why we become xenophobic, it because of the colonialism and the white supremacy that has made us to fight among ourselves and to hate, to self-hate ourselves. But now addressing the issue in the question, there are a lot of things. One is housing, urban development and planning, and then infrastructure, planning, service delivery, and the growth within the township. So this is the widespread kind of a question, but let me start with housing. What we need to understand about housing, we need to understand property rights. Who are the people who owns the land? And also the issues of restoration of properties for those who the properties were taken out of them from the Act of 1900s in South Africa when they introduced the deeds to register properties and so on. So now when you look at the population growth, because it's not only by migrants, but also we need to understand the issues of immigration and emigration and migrants within South Africa as a whole. Now, Johannesburg becomes the place where everybody wants to find themselves in. You can speak to people who are coming from the Eastern Cape. You can speak to people who are coming from different provinces around the country. Their destiny is to find themselves around Johannesburg. For one thing, the infrastructure there, it is equitable and it's working. The issues of learning institutions there are prominent and are ranked among the best in the world. So everybody for issues of training and development and education and job opportunities, all of those things, they also influence the influx. And then when you have to budget for housing, then it becomes an issue. But also we need to understand that before you can build, the government doesn't own the land. So either they need that they have to speak to the landowners so that they can buy the land, or either through the process of expropriation. Through the process of expropriation. For an example, there are quite numbers of buildings around the Johannesburg area, especially the city center, that the properties that are hijacked. But if then the city is looking for the owners and they can't find them, then they are bound and forced to expropriate so that they can push the issue of development and building and also with working with businesses around the city so that there can be a reconstruction and development of these properties and development. But now when you speak of planning and development, now we address the credentials, which means all the stands that are within the city, but also understand that the Johannesburg, it has a structural reform or a spatial framework development plan of the apartheid government, of which it has excluded a number of communities around Soweto. Of each on itself, it needs to be reviewed so that reconstruction and development can also take place around those areas to address the issue. But also, when it comes to service delivery, there is no service delivery without payment of services. I know that in a Bill of Rights, the Constitution says everybody has a right to shelter, to water, to electricity, and so on. But those things, they don't come free. Then we need engineers. We need chemical engineers to purify water. We need engineers to supply electricity. We need engineers to build roads and so on. But all those people, all those specialized people, they come with a cost. So if then I know from the 80s, there was an issue to say we don't pay our services because that was a strategy to collapse then the apartheid government. But in the present day, all of us, we are responsible so that if we pay for these services, then these services will be provided for us, but without which, then it also goes back to an issue to address the issue of economic development. Now, when we are in the economic development, recently the government has taken a position that there is a fund that is available. If the government doesn't have funds, the only time they have funds, it is through taxes. And those taxes are through rates and taxes. Those are water and light services. That's where we get money to provide services and also to develop and build clinics and so on. If we don't pay, then there will be no services. Thank you.
Well, it takes money to develop, but also I think the most crucial and what you touch on, it's active citizenry, citizens understanding a role that they have to play. I am telling you, for me, it's quite exciting. One of the shows I used to host on Moja Love is called Kukitila, which was a property rights from how people, sell RDP houses, amongst each other to non-locals, and then human settlement has to deal with the consequences of that, or someone is in a relationship with someone who's from a different country, and then the children, someone takes the house over. That was one version of a show that I did. Then I did another one called Umpagati, going into the very communities where they have settled in a part of the city and the land is not owned by the city. But because the Bill of Rights says they have a right to dignity, they must get toilets and water. But the reality of it is the infections and impact on their health in that space is dire. But they want to be closer to the city to access the work. And then the city has to deal with ozamazama, a bridging of electricity, and the city trying to come to explain in those spaces is one of the most difficult mammoth tasks. And if there is no rates being paid, the city can't fully function and sustain itself. And I think those points are quite clear. So we had a comment there that I wanted to take. Please, may I have that comment so I can go to that. The problem is not xenophobia. Xenophobia is a symptom. The real problem is open and uncontrolled borders in a country with 35% unemployed, and 60% or so of that is young people, and being the world's most unequal society. So the lack of political will in leading and taking ownership leads to symptoms being misdiagnosed as problems. The notion that ethnic wars is highly misleading and misguided. Doctor, I think that's the comment that we made there. You want to respond to that bottom part? No?
I think the comment is quite provocative, because that's true. Xenophobia is not an issue, because I think the part that maybe we need to also unpack is the one that says the problem is the porous borders. It still goes further to say, but why are those people moving? Why are they migrating? They are migrating because the conditions in their countries are not okay. If those countries can sort out their economies, their politics, and the social dynamics in those particular countries, I don't think people would move and would move illegally. I think if everything else is fine, people would remain where they are. There's nobody who doesn't want to be home. I mean, home is the best. So the challenge is beyond the borders. Even if we try and solve it by enclosing those borders, South Africa needs other countries in either way, and people are going to be migrating. Of course, I understand the part of the illegal migration, which is something else. And then the ethnic part. Can you assist me there? I'm not so sure whether I understand it.
I think they're alluding to when we were saying that you know, if we remove the conversation of migration from outside the borders of South Africa, you know, we still have a situation of people saying this is a Zulu area, this is a this area, this is a that, which are some of which you said, you know, those are things that could even lead, you know, to ethnic, you know, disagreements or ethnic wars in that context. That's what actually what I was asking, if you wanted to elaborate that, or we leave it at that. Yeah. Okay. You want to add?
At least on the ethnic groups. So in our country, you need to understand the apartheid regime, what it did when, for an example like Soweto, you'll find that in Zola is Zulu people, and then in Shawela is Venda people and Tsonga speaking people. And then Mletsane, Mapetla, you'll find Pedis, Sutus, and Swanas. That was done deliberately so that people, they must never be united. So every time we hate self among ourselves, and then to spearhead separation and division among people. But it's unfortunate that if we don't come together as people and become one, whatever that we're trying to build, a better Africa, it won't exist. And also we will be able to hate among ourselves. I'm also like from the mixed tribal marriage. My dad is Zulu, my mom is Xhosa, but I've got grandparents who are Tswanas and Sutus. But discrimination when you go to others, when they say, here Maxhosa fihlile, and then it hurts, that creates division. So it doesn't end up there, but it also becomes the psychological factor that among ourselves, we hate each other so much that we can't even help each other or neither employ one another in order to advance and champion the interest of a black child in South Africa.
Awesome. Actually, yesterday I had also had an opportunity to attend the Pan-African Intertrade Investment Council. Dr. Matthew Porser was speaking there, on as well as Dr. Panuel Maduna, as the elders amongst the people who were on the panel. Dr. Panuel Maduna mentioned something very interesting, which I think I want to throw into the space. He said we gotta realize that when Europeans came into South Africa in 1652, they came with the original identity as the English, as the Dutch, and all of that. But when they landed into South Africa, they needed to assume a new identity, and that new identity is calling themselves the Afrikaners. And then they made us to go and focus on being Zulu, being Pedi, being Sotho. So we forget the part of being Africans, because Afrikaners, it means Africans. And if we had remained, they found us as Africans, and if we had remained Africans, we wouldn't be having these kind of conversations, and how we need to understand where we come from. And we, in the irony of now, where, you know, Afrikaners have left the country, we need to do anything and everything in our power to be Africans, because that's what will take us forward. Because if every day you're going to be waking up thinking, I'm Pedi, I'm Zulu, I'm this, that's probably one of the reasons that will definitely hold us back. Thank you for that. Let us move on to our next panelist, to Alberto da Cruz. Mr. da Cruz joining us as well online. And Mr. da Cruz talking to us from a point of view of coming from Mozambique, political scientist and economist. And I'm sure all of us are aware that besides Zimbabwe, Mozambicans are also a big part of migrants into our country, and have been for years in South Africa, and vice versa. So let's get into that and hear what Mr. da Cruz has to add.
First of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this invitation. My name is Alberto da Cruz. I'm from Mozambique, as was said, and I've been working in developing, we say developing world, but basically is economic development sector. So basically, I think one of the first things I would like to say about migration, it's very funny when we speak about South Africa context, how it is is impacting the economy, the society in South Africa, because there is another side on how it is impacting the economy and society in Mozambique. I think there is, if you go, for example, in one of the provinces which call in south of Mozambique called Gaza.
Problem there. Are you with us?
Hello?
Okay, yes, we can hear you now. Welcome back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I was saying that if you go to if you go to this province in the south, you will see how the migrants, which are working in minor sector, they are the base of the economy of this province. It means that migration has this positive side in case of Gaza in particular, how families they depend on the money that are sent from these migrants to the homeland. And this shows one thing also, that migration may be something that is caused by the lack of opportunities from the place where the people live and go to look to another opportunity in another lands, which in this case for the south of Africa, South Africa is becoming the El Dorado of Africa. And so I think the root cause of all these migrations we are seeing, that's true that sometimes we go, for example, to another country to start, sometimes because we look for higher opportunities. But if we look the type of migration for the case of Africa in particular, or South of Africa, I think we can see that there is something which I think is very important, which is the poverty around these regions. It means if you have poverty, if you don't have opportunity, once again, people will to travel or will to leave their homelands seeking for another opportunity. So what caused actually this kind of, I would say, movement? I think once again, there is thing that we can say that is lack of leadership in Africa and the southern of Africa in particular. This kind of, or the miss of leadership can also be characterized by the lack of willing to do stuff properly. If we talk about the lack of infrastructure, for example, in townships, the problem is the lack of infrastructure because we don't have the funds to fund this infrastructure, for example, or those funds are not there because there is, for example, corruption. When we talk about, for example, the Guptas in South Africa, when we ask about what happened with South African Airways, so we can see from there that there is something that is more than our history. If the white people, they work or they didn't give us opportunity, which is a fact. The colonialism was bad for Africa. That is the fact. But after that, what happened with the leadership in Africa? In my point of view, I think the leadership or the leaders in Africa, they substituted decolonialism. It means are there who become more rich in Africa, are there who all the resources are working towards or to support them or to make them even powerful or more powerful day by day. So everything that we see when we talk about corruption, when we talk about, for example, the structure of the economy in Africa, which is more based on export of raw materials, I think this is very, 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 in my point of view, linked with the kind of leadership we have. So if we want to change Africa, it means that we have to change the mindset of the leaders. We have to change the leadership, how the leadership they operate. They must be more responsible for their actions. They cannot still you have someone who have destroyed an economy, for example, in such country in Africa. But what happened with this person? The person still working with us. There is no a strong hand from the justice, for example, in Africa in general, to make them accountable. So I think if we don't change the kind of leadership, we will still to make good workshops like this, good debate like this. But my doubt is are we going to change if we don't change the mind of the leaders or the kind of leadership we have? That we have to invest in education, that we have to invest also in our, when we say our culture, it's not just being African and dancing and do this, is what makes us Africans. And we have to transmit that kind of knowledge to our young children, our young leader, to show kindly who we are. What I'm showing is that corrupt, we are not corrupt. So why are we still producing so corrupted leaders? So we need to change this figure of leadership and have leaders more positioned. So we cannot be the ones who, when go to Europe or America, our leaders become a student in the classroom, and the European leaders or American leaders are those who speak with our leaders, which as they are nothing. So I think that is embarrassing for a continent which is aspiring to be something. We need a strong leadership. I think that is the point for me of everything. So migration is, just to finish, migration is because in each countries there is poverty. These countries are not developing. They are stuck, and they're stuck because there is a corruption in these countries. So we need to change in order to change the future of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Most definitely, I think the point you make about the role of leadership and the character and quality of leadership that Africa deserves if we want to change the current status quo. Very interesting, because we have some of the richest countries in the world, in this continent. But the reality of it is that the people of Africa are kept poor. And the question is, why are they kept poor? And who is keeping them poor? Are the leaders colluding with this European and foreign countries coming into the continent to keep our people poor? I read somewhere where one leader said that the new colonialism is not countries invading and taking over countries. It's them sending businesses from their countries and collaborating with leaders to continuously keep Africans poor, because we are not poor as Africans. They are keeping us poor. I'd like to acknowledge Raz Hain from Activate, who is also joining us. And then I'm going to engage some of the hands. And please, Alberto, stand by so you can answer if some of the questions are addressed to you. Now, Ayanda Ngobo says, the narrative that labels South Africans as xenophobic oversimplifies the complex issue. In townships and urban areas across our nation, South Africans coexist with foreign nationals who freely move, establish businesses, and integrate into communities. However, this coexistence is strained by serious challenges that demand open and honest discussion. And I think that's what we are trying to have here today. Communities often bear the brunt of crime such as murder, rape, human trafficking, and other forms of lawlessness disproportionately linked to some undocumented foreign nationals. These issues cannot be dismissed or scapegoated without addressing the real impact on South African citizens. Failure to confront these realities perpetuates tension and hinders progress. As a nation, we must prioritize the well-being of our citizens, particularly in the context of an already strained economy. The influx of foreign nationals places additional pressure on limited resources, exacerbating challenges like unemployment and poverty. And those are just, I think, some of the things that you touch on. You really make a strong, valid point there as well. Okay, so let's take Sozabe. Sozabe, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Good morning, moderator. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. It's a pity your camera is off, but you can go ahead.
Unfortunately, I'm suffering from flu. I'm wearing a gown, ma'am.
Okay, no, we don't want to see that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Sozabe is my clan name. My name is Oscar Madlala. I'm from the religious sector. I'm an ordained priest, but I'm also a chaplain in correctional services. So before I go ahead, just a disclaimer, the views I'm going to express don't represent my department nor my church. I'm here as an activist and a fellow South African. Doctor, you covered me on my first comment or question because I wanted to raise the issue of how then you've indicated that there are economic situations in the other countries that drive people to flock to South Africa. Then the question is, how do we assist, especially SADC, so that there is economic sustainability and political stability in those countries? That is question number one. Number two, moderator, is the issue of labor. What causes tension? I think we're all aware, if you hire a foreigner and a South African, the question is who will be more expensive? And this is one of the things that bring tension, that these people, offer cheap labor because they are desperate due to economic situations that they are facing in their country. And they've got no choice because of, the cost of living in South Africa. It's only now that we are stabilizing. We know what has happened since lockdown. So how do we address that? The third point I want to raise, as I said, I work in the justice cluster. We have a very serious problem of overcrowding in our prisons. And one of the reasons is the undocumented foreigners who must be looked after by our own tax, who have a right to, medical attention, nutrition, rehabilitation, safe custody, and all that. And all these things are costly. And this is what brings animosity, Mamu Libyan, because already someone was saying that our economy is under duress, our young people are unemployed. And on top of that, we must still take care of, the undocumented foreigners. I mean, I'm here in Pretoria. If you go to places such as your Steve Biko, for instance, if you go to George Mukari Hospital, I mean, the queues that are there, it tells you the situation we face in the country. And on top of that, we must still serve, a foreigner. So these are some of the reality issues that we are facing on the ground as leaders. And the last thing I want to mention is that it's been 30 years later. I want to say this, a time has come where we can no longer use apartheid as an excuse because we had 30 years to fix it. If there's no economy in the township, it's our duty. We had ample time for the past 30 years. So I keep on hearing this, especially from, politicians that what apartheid has done, but we had a chance from 1994 to fix and repair. And what is it that we have done? And that's the reason why there's no congruence and synergy between the leadership of this time and the so-called AMA 2000 because they were not there. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone want to comment there? So Zabe, I like that conversation part about the labor aspect of issues. You know, the undocumented foreign national versus the South African in a space where there are labor laws that there's policy, there's labor laws that speak to that. And we I think also we need to hold ourselves accountable to some level, and our fellow other South Africans, you know, Caucasian counterparts in businesses, because we are the ones who actually employ foreign nationals, all of us in our homes. We employ them. We don't ask for their documents, you know, and we could be part of the solution if we ask for the right documents, and if we participate in making sure that the people we hire, you know, their documents are proper, or we facilitate them getting their documents properly. But we also sit back. As much as I fully agree and I concur with you, government is responsible, but I feel like a time has come where we also need to sort of like, you know, take part, whether it's our maids, our gardeners, people that restaurants that we go to. We all see that every day. We're all part of it. So we can't also keep, you know, passing the buck. Dando, may I please hear your comment, and then I'll get the others to comment. Dando? Is Dando still, do you still want to comment, Dando? Okay. If Dando doesn't want to comment, let me
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
We're
okay.
struggling.
All right, go ahead, Dando.
Yo, I am under the weather, you guys. I had to make sure that I come in spite of me, you know, feeling very, very sick. So please do excuse me if I do cough in between. All right, so I just want to say thank you very much for to the RNM for, you know, inviting us. And I want to say good morning to the civil society leaders and the citizens of our beloved continent. All right, so I am here on behalf of Progressive Forces Organization, which is in alignment with Patriotic Voices. We thank you for the opportunity to participate in this virtual conversation. All right, so let me get to the point. Before I do that, there's a gentleman that spoke about ethnic wars and talking about hating ourselves. You know, I think that could be a very dangerous view. I'm an elderly lady. I'm almost 50 years old, and I am proud of being at that age. I have witnessed sort of like ethnic wars, and after 1994, we have not experienced that. We only heard this rhetoric from a specific group of people. I can tell you, if we would say that we shy away when a person says that here is a Zulu coming, that means that now we are shying away from our identity. In my space, we have all sorts of ethnic groups. We have Xhosas, Sotos, and so on. I have never experienced such. So we must be very careful of that notion. Now, let me get on to my submission. When we look, you on your agenda, you speak about different things, but I will start with the good. Okay, we recognize the progress of Africa, that Africa has made, the rich history of liberation, and the determination of its people. Our constitution remains a global beacon of hope. Okay, promising dignity, equality, freedom for all. In townships and informal settlement, despite economic neglect, our people continue to innovate, build, and survive. These communities are a living heart of South African resilience. However, there is a bad as well. On the bad, we often see South Africans that are forgotten, invisible in policy, displaced in economy, and disregarded in a very country that they have liberated. And then when it comes to human rights, you know, when it comes to the right to work, there's a section 22 on our constitution that promises every citizen the right to choose their trade or profession freely. But in practice, many South Africans are locked out of opportunities due to non-compliance of employers hiring foreign nationals under exploitative conditions. And then we get to the right to access basic services. South Africans queue for years for housing, while informal settlement grow rapidly under pressure of unmanaged migration. This strains healthcare, education, and sanitation services, making the poor poorer. It is a violation of dignity when citizens are told their grievances are xenophobic, rather than acknowledging as a constitutional cry for fairness, justice, and order. When enforcement fails to curb illegal immigration, illegal trade, illegal employment practices, it is not only a failure of governance, it is a violation of citizens' human rights, which often is overlooked. We see that most of the time, the human rights that are normally recognized is the migrant human rights, but not the citizens themselves. South African citizens deserve human rights too. A patriotic government must not only protect human rights broadly, but prioritize the protection of citizens whose tax contribution sustains the state. We do not stand against our African brothers and citizens. We stand for South Africans, and through this patriotism, we lay the foundation for just Africa. Now, okay, so I'm not going to get into the policy and the enforcement of the laws or however. I can get that to that at a later stage. But now when it comes to social cohesion is impossible where there is economic exclusion, legal confusion, and government denial. Unity must be built on justice, not denialism. We are bearing a brand as South Africans where everybody is expecting us to push our human rights aside, to push everything aside and accommodate the people that are coming from the outside. As one colleague has said, in the township, we are facing a lot of things. I'm going to land just now. Just give me like 30 minutes. All right. So we all know that we have a drug problem in South Africa. We have a problem with human trafficking and all these other crimes that we are experiencing. They've never been there before. We're experiencing them now. And yet, we are supposed to remain quiet. When we speak, it is said that we are xenophobic. So I think those are the issues that we need to address. We do have the solutions. If you'd like to engage us more as patriots, thank you very much.
Thank you. Dad, I didn't realize that you were making your submission because I just thought that I was going to cue you to do your submission. I thought it was someone else who was making a comment, but thank you very much. So that's Ntando Deni, right? Am I correct? From Progressive
That's correct.
Forces? Yeah, that's Ntando Deni from Progressive Forces on how we can reignite patriotic values among South Africans that embrace both national identity and Pan-African solidarity. You know, Ntando, from some of the points that you made, I think, and anybody also can speak to that, are we patriotic as South Africans, or do we pull out our patriotism when we feel that non-South Africans or believe that they're getting better opportunities than us? Are we really patriotic as South Africans? Because also when we speak to the migration, which you mentioned about mushrooming squatter camps and all of that, and the RDPs, also things like that, the numbers don't really reflect some of the sentiments that we sometimes express. It's a lot of South Africans there. They're the ones who occupy the places. They're the ones who sell the RDP houses to foreign nationals. They're the ones who don't necessarily work with the city of Johannesburg, who says you can't live here. It's an inhabitable space. And then they're like, but we want to live here. But when the conversation in spaces, it's foreign nationals. So are we really patriotic? Are we really or we just also pushing, blame facts as South Africans?
I believe, was that question directed to me or other panelists?
No, to you specifically, on because
right.
my point for you is you to speak to us about how we can embrace national identity and Pan-African solidarity. And because you spoke on the emphasis of how South Africans are being compromised or sacrificed, so to say. So I thought maybe you can elaborate on, where is our level of patriotism and what is it driving it? Is it driving it because we're patriotic, through and through, or our patriotism only comes when we feel like, oh, we are, we're unjustified in this particular area?
All right, thank you so much for that question. I really do believe that we are patriotic. However, there are some issues that and the dynamics that makes everything.
Brilliant. Mandy, please can you mute yourself because you're interrupting our presentation? Sorry for that, Ndando.
Thank you so much. All
Okay,
right,
please
thank you so much. I believe that we definitely are patriotic. However, the change, the dynamics, the economy change, whereby South Africans find themselves between the rock and the hard place. You would find that then there comes in those moral values tend to shift, especially when it comes to our officials. In my circle, there's a lot of people that are patriotic. However, people will do anything when they feel that they are disadvantaged at some point, which we don't believe in. And number two, you must remember when people wanted to be patriotic in the early 2000s, whatever, there was that thing that was going on the media every time that would say, you xenophobic, you xenophobic, you xenophobic. So there's a confusion now whether people believe that being patriotic is xenophobic and, vice versa. So that's where I see the problem is, but I definitely do believe that the majority of South Africans definitely do love their country, but a lot of work has to be done in education. Thank you.
All right, and anyone can answer this or contribute. Can a love for a country exist without promoting xenophobia? And how do we practically express Ubuntu when facing economic hardships and social pressure? And those are some of the points that Ndando touched on. Let me take some of your comments on the side. Kwezi wa Mpumlwana says, what is the view of the panelist on the approach by most countries where there is a differentiated queuing system and a differentiated pricing system for citizens and non-citizens? The idea of no recourse to public funds. How is the view on the matter of visas being aligned to the type of work permit a person gets? How much of that should apply in South Africa, and what should be grounds or what should be grounds of exception? I think any of you can comment on that. And then Teboho says, SJ Mutsiri Harodi, a member of MRM Gauteng, representing the Sidibeng MRM coordination. I wish to address the attendees. Please, what? Didn't send an RSVP based on other commitments. Okay, hashtag Abahambi. Okay, Teboho. To reduce hate among Africans, we must first understand each other's stories. Instead of seeing fellow Africans as competition, we need platforms for cultural exchange, shared economic projects, media that promotes Pan-African identity. We are stronger together than we are divided. That's from Cliff. Cliff, colonialization drew an artificial borders across Africa that split families and united rival groups, laying a foundation for division and conflict. This legacy still influences our economies, politics, and even the way Africans treat each other. Overcoming this history starts with education, rewriting our narrative, and working together across borders for shared goals. Africa Day reminds us that we are one people with a shared destiny. If we truly want to honor that legacy, we must confront the system, corruption, colonial borders, economic exclusion that keep us divided, and replace them with unity, justice and cooperation, and that is my view. Okay, let's take let's take some comments. Brilliant. Did you want to say something? Brilliant. Okay, but I guess because you wrote a comment.
Yes, I want to say something.
Okay, go ahead. Hey, brilliant. We are not on African time. Let's go.
Yes. I want to actually raise a question on why do we call Africans that come to South Africa foreigners, but we call white people that cross sea tourists? Like, why do we neglect our own people and we worship other people? Why do we do that?
Okay, Bonang, would you want to take that?
Please.
Go ahead.
I believe that a tourist goes to a tourist destination. They don't go to Hillbrow or Sunnyside and reside there on tourist visa and want to conduct work or obtain business in South Africa, whereas they are on tourist visit. When you are a foreigner doesn't have a racial clause. A foreigner means a non-citizen, whether you are in South Africa or outside of South Africa. That is number one. Well, if people in Alexander are saying we don't want foreigners, you cannot expect that community to go and grab the Germans in Cape Town, Camps Bay, who are there for tourists, and put them there and say, Abahambe to them. That is number one. Number two, Madam Chair, I thought maybe we will be given a chance after each speaker did their submission. Can I ask questions to some of the panelists that have done their submissions? Am I permitted?
Of course.
Thank you very much. I forgot who's the gentleman who was speaking about the 1884 Berlin Conference.
It's Dr. It's Mr. John from the city of Johannesburg, Fana John Sefu, from the property unit in the city. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. John. As Africans, before 1884, we had kingdoms, and those kingdoms had borders. As an African, you wouldn't jump to another kingdom just because you are black, just because the skin pigmentation is the same. Unless you are declaring war. That is why when we had kingdoms, the chief or the king, in times of drought, they will send a delegation to the neighboring kingdom that, can we please allow our people to come fetch water in your rivers? Can you please allow our livestock to come and graze at your land? You don't just go in unless you are declaring war. That is Africa. I'm not going to go into the 1884 and what they have done. I was expecting that today's conversation and the dialogue will be on how Africa can unite. We can. I will give an example with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Doesn't matter what criteria are they using, but those African countries, they have currently united because they share the same oppressor, the same vision and ideologies. There's no Mali people that are running to Burkina Faso at the moment and fighting the Burkina Faso people or citizens for the limited resources that they have. They are all in their countries, facing their government, facing the situation that they have in their countries, and fighting together to make their countries to be better and form the Sahel. But today in South Africa, we are expected as South Africans to have this African unity at our expenses, at our South African resources. That is what I wanted to highlight. Okay. And going back to Mrs. Januta Williams, she spoke about the Refugee Act and township economy by foreign nationals. There's a social economic analysis that was made on Ethiopian businesses in all 9 provinces. And in that research, it shows that 66.6% of those foreign Ethiopian businesses in 9 provinces are not paying any tax in South Africa, meaning they are trading illegally and they're taking the money outside of South Africa. And then 61.1, they're not even employing South Africans. The notion that foreigners, when they come to South Africa, are creating jobs or aiding into the economy of the South Africa It was a notion of the research that was done long time ago, in early as before 2009. We cannot use that by now, because after 2010 in South Africa, we have experienced an influx of foreign migrants into the country. The other issue that I wanted to highlight is the one that they say, we are, when we say we want the land, I believe any African that say what they want the land, they're talking about the mineral resources. We're not here arguing about the land grabs of stakes, of hijacked buildings in CBD in Johannesburg. We are talking about the nationalizations of mineral resources. That one of saying we want health, we want land and hijacked buildings. That is the failure of the current government that we have and the previous ANC ruling government in South Africa. Because in Joburg alone, it is identified by 2021 after local election that there's more than 1,170 hijacked buildings in the city. We know who's occupying those buildings. We are not going to shy away from the fact that the foreigners are burdening the resources that are limited to South Africa. And South Africa cannot be expected to carry the colonization scars that Africa is carrying, because as South Africa, we didn't colonize any African country. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonang Sipolwane there. I'm going to take some of the side comments, and then if any of you, if you want to answer to that, I'll give you a chance before we move on. It was just a comment, okay, an input. All right. So let's read some of the comments. Brilliant. I think we did brilliant. Cliff, we also read Cliff's one. Okay, I'm gonna come to you, Russ. I just want to go through the ones that we have before I come to you. I believe that many South Africans carry a deep sense of pain. This is from Annie Malimela. Of pain and frustration because of poverty, unemployment, and the legacy of apartheid. But sometimes that pain gets misdirected toward fellow Africans instead of the system that created the inequality. It's not that South Africans are naturally xenophobic, but without economic justice and honest leadership, it becomes easy to turn on each other. We need more Pan-African education, media that promotes unity, policies that supports both locals and migrants. True patriotism is about building a better South Africa, one that sees other Africans not as threats, but as brothers and sisters. We can't claim to love Africa and hate other Africans. If we're truly patriotic, then our patriotism must include African solidarity. Blaming migrants for broken systems is not patriotism. It's a distraction from the real issue. Let's build together instead of breaking each other down. Okay, Juanita, I would like to reply to that comment about the Ethiopian business not paying taxes. Okay, hold that. Brilliant. Why don't you talk about how Zimbabwe and Angola help South Africa fight liberation? Brilliant. That is one of the things that incites a lot of people, because you're saying we need to look back. And when you say you help people, are you helping them because you want something in return? So I don't think that is one way of like addressing the conversation. And then I think she also mentioned, honestly, when you talk about tourists, really tourists are people in a bus who do go to Soweto, to Vilakazi Street, then get on the bus back to the airport and leave. So also this comment is also very problematic. But yeah, like, why don't you talk about how Zimbabwe and Angola help South Africa fight for liberation? So because they can say, how many years did you help? And they'll say, we've helped you for 20 years, now it's over. And then that won't stand now. And Angolans will say, we don't like South Africa, you guys speak English, we go to Brazil because we're Portuguese. So it's a disingenuous way of engaging about the challenge. I'm not sure. So I'm going to take, I have Juanita standing by, and then I had who raised their hands? Rain. I had Russ. So I want, because I want Russ to come on. And then I'm gonna take Juanita to give the comment. Russ, are you ready? Sorry. Okay, Bishop Sipho, please mute yourself. Sipho Hobbs, mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. Russ, go ahead.
Greetings, everyone. Hello. So yeah, it's been a tough conversation. Everyone's input is yeah, noted. I just want to like draw a mind map, right, of how we can basically just get a different level of consciousness on this. So Achima Feje wrote a paper about regarding the ideology of tribalism, right? And he mentions how the social formations and the social how movements used to take place in Africa. It was very um, cyclical, right? If we can say that. So there was always movements, and there was always mixing amongst the different language groups, right? But that's from the perspective of Archie. Then we also need to consider this year it's 140 years since the Berlin Conference. So the Berlin Conference lasted from 1884 till 1885. It ended on the 27th of February, right? And Europe literally got together and drew the borders in Africa, right? And today we have 55 different nationalities. And we seriously need to reflect on these national identities that we use by describing each other as Zimbabwean or South African or Ethiopian, Somalian, and etc. Then it's also 100 years of Frantz Fanon. And Frantz Fanon said that humanity will have to, for us to reach a new humanism, we're actually going to have to address the what's the word, wealth redistribution across humanity, right? He speaks about post the struggle between capitalism and socialism. Humanity will actually have to address the wealth gap. Now, if we look at Africa and if we look at systematic issues like illicit financial flows and how the neo-colonial global north corporate capitalist system still steals millions in dollar, right? Funnels it out of the continent and leaves the continent to still scrape about crumbs, and hence we find fault in a hospitality labor class, which is our so-called foreign nationals and truck drivers, right? And then they will also see how the how construction subcontractors in construction uses cheap Zimbabwean labor on construction sites, and now we end up fighting each other. Even on the farms, we see how farm owners use cheaper labor forms for their own benefits, and then we end up fighting each other as Africans. All right, and I just wanted to touch on that. We can go into more nuanced engagements, but I want us all to think on these aspects, on Achima Feje, Frantz Fanon, who turns 100 in July, and then also the Berlin Conference, which is 140 years in today's society, and contextualize that with illicit financial flows. South Africa is a big brother to Africa. We must understand we are an economic base. We must understand why global South migrants are flooding Europe, are flooding places like South Africa, and it's also to blame on the colonizer, right? So the colonizer has created this chaotic systems and deprivation within societies, and now we see that these victims are flooding Europe, they're flooding the EU, they're flooding to an extent Southern Africa. But yeah, it's a give and a take. That's all I wanted to contextualize. Thank you, everyone. I will be filling in on the other panel discussion. I just wanted to touch on these issues. Thank you.
All right, great stuff. Thank you so much for that contribution, Russ Hain from Activate. Great inputs and insightful input there. Okay, so Juanita, you wanted to respond. I'm going to take that, and then It brings us to 12 minutes after 7, so we'll spend another 5 or so minutes on this part, so that we can move on to the next. Okay, so Juanita, I'll take you, and then I will go back to some of the comments. Juanita? Oh, I also,
Hi.
King, I also see you. Juanita, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I believe that the Ethiopian businesses who are not paying tax are part of a much bigger problem. I mean, we saw how the government decided to start a registration process for spaza shops. So in that case, in that instance, I don't believe that it's an Ethiopian business problem, but it's more of an informal sector problem, because there is no registration. I mean, I could probably go to any spaza shop right now and ask them if they are registered, especially if they are being run out of a small building that they attach to their house in the township, or it's just a corner shop and it's part of the house, it might not even be registered for business. I also wanted to go back just shortly to what one of the presenters said about how we've had 30 years to solve the issues that South Africa has. And I just want to remind everyone that 30 years is not a very long time. Do we really expect that all of our problems, all of the problems created by apartheid, all of the pain that apartheid caused for South Africans would be dealt with in 30 years? I think that's just not possible. And then I want to add to I'm thankful for Rasain's contribution. I just want to add that capitalism is one of the issues that we have to deal with. The fact that people, like store owners, will employ people who are cheaper laborers is a factor that fits into capitalism, and that is just naturally, unfortunately, the exploitation of workers, whether they are from Kenya or whether they are from Somalia and they are living in South Africa, or whether they are South African workers. Our labor law is not being implemented in a good way, and it really just comes down to governance, and the fact that the government does need to step in, firstly, to apply the laws that the country has written down, and it needs to be applied to everyone equally. I don't think it needs to be a difference between, we fought for our freedom and we fought, our constitution says that we are all equal. And when you are in South Africa, you should be considered an equal person in front of the law for health services, for all of those benefits that you can get in South Africa. Thank you.
All right, Juanita, thank you so much for that contribution, making some interesting points. I think we need to find ways on that labor discussion, because we also, as South Africans, as I said earlier on, we employ people, and we also do cut corners, and we know what the labor law is, and we have to find ways to apply it in the smallest form. We can't expect big corporates to do it when individuals who also some way somehow are employers are not doing that, and then we turn around and we shift the blame. Gugu King, please go ahead.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Penny. Thank you for this opportunity. I am also from Progressive Forces, and I just want to quickly touch base on the sort of work that we do. That, yes, although we call ourselves patriots, it's mostly about holding our governments accountable. And I just want to rebut into what the other speaker said. I can't remember his name, that we have a problem with leadership. Our leadership is, at this current moment, I could say it's bending over backwards and forward to do everything but to uphold the sovereignty of South Africans. And I think as patriots, when we speak of South Africa, we mostly speak of South Africa as post-1994. And we do realize that, yes, South Africa is very unequal, but also at the same time, we have a bigger enemy than in the apartheid times. In the apartheid times, all of us as Black people, we were poor, we were displaced, and we are not seen as citizens in South Africa. But right now, we have a problem of a new elite that has emerged that only wants to keep the interest of their side, which is why we are having this big debate on BEE, and we can't discredit BEE because, you know, it has allowed, I can even say, great journalists like yourselves to rise, Penny. We wouldn't have seen, if it wasn't a prerequisite for Black employment or other races, if such laws weren't in place. So it is unfortunate that we as Africans, we are now finding ourselves very much divided. And I can appreciate the whole conversation of the Berlin conference and when they decided to do borders and whatnot. But during those times, after the Berlin conference, we knew that there is Nigerians. We didn't interact with them, but we knew that there is different countries. And I just want to comment on Raz and just sort of disagree that we as an African country that got liberated literally only 30 years ago, we cannot be seen as a big brother. It goes back to what the other speaker was saying, that our problem in Africa is the leadership. I'm currently doing a personal project where I'm researching, there's a constitutional court case going on where South Africa is alleged to be registered as a corporation. And obviously, the counter argument is that no, it's just for funding and whatnot. But I'm trying to see the links between other African countries that were registered as a cooperation or just were registered in the United States security equities or whatever that is, what impact it has had on those African countries. So right now we have a problem with leadership. It's literally not Black against white or other races in Africa, but it's about an elite that is so willing to sell out the people that they look like, which is the Black skin color, because we are in Africa. And they are so happy with that. And unfortunately, millions and millions of people are bearing the repercussions of that. We as Africans cannot simply accept that we are going to be cheap labor. I have a sister, she's working in China. I will not say she's cheap labor, but I know that she probably will not have the benefits that obviously a Chinese citizen has. I know that there is a debate between Chinese people and South African teachers that they are taking jobs, whatnot. They are cheap labor, they are teaching English. And us as also South Africans, we are having this debate as we are right now, that Mozambicans, Zimbabweans, Malawans, they are cheap labor, they're an option because they are not as protected as obviously South Africans in terms of the labor law. So we need to move towards, I'm going to land right now, we need as Africans to all move towards the direction where we say that we are better than just cheap labor. We are not cheap labor. Like you said, Penny, we are from a rich continent. So we cannot accept being at the bottom barrel when it comes to anything. In fact, no one should be that. So right now, we need to all hold our governments accountable. And that's what we as progressive forces do. We understand that there's all these other issues, but we're saying, governments, this is what the Constitution is saying. We always tell them that we are not bringing anything new to your table. We are saying that the Constitution says this, you are supposed to be upholding the Constitution. Why are you not doing that? That's the only thing that we do. We are not against, like Dando said, we're not against our brothers. We are definitely not Afrophobic or xenophobic, but we are saying that this is what the law says. Why will you not uphold it? Why will you not do better as our leadership? Thank you, leaders.
Thank you, Coco King, there, for your contribution. I'm going to read some of the comments. I see Clive. I see you. I'm going to take Clive and read the comments, and then I think we can get ready for the next panel. Am I correct? Okay, so let's take Leko Tache. The issues about documented foreign nationals, whether black or white. Does South Africa have the capacity to enforce the rule of law regarding illegal foreigners? The pressure that illegal migration put on the health system, the pressure that illegal migration put on the health system, human settlement, crime, and the justice system should be enough for government to act and enforce the rule of law. Any Malemela, when we talk about South Africa's liberation, we must also remember the sacrifices made by our African neighbors. Countries like Zimbabwe, Angola, Mozambique, Zambia gave shelter, weapons, training, and political support to the ANC and other liberation movements. Some paid a heavy price for doing so. Their people stood with us when we were not free, and we must honor that solidarity, not forget it. Today we should treat those same nations and their citizens with respect, not resentment. I don't think Ndando, South Africans are being resentful, but also I just think South Africans also just feel like it can be a carrot that's dangled on their face when they're dealing with socioeconomic issues that affect their life every day. You can't keep saying to South Africans, yeah, because we housed you, therefore when this happens, you must understand. I think this is very disingenuous for us to minimize it to that level. Patriotism is the love of your people and your country. Charity begins at home. How are we expected to accommodate the whole continent while our people are neglected? Remember, all these people are not stateless. We need to encourage our fellow Africans to come up with ways to rebuild countries and be patriotic. That's another one from Dan. Brilliant says, I personally believe that if we can allow and give foreign nationals documents and IDs, we will be able to keep track of how many people come in the country. Government must make them citizens and allow them to pay tax, just like all of us. That way, we will be able to benefit of being able to be held accountable of the. Okay. If they are documented, they will also be able to be held accountable if they commit any crime also. Let's face the facts. We'll never be able to remove them because some South Africans have generational knowledge from these foreign countries. Let's work together and make Africa great. Economically, SA's economy is big brother. Andwa movement. Our industrial base is considered top 2 on the continent. Andwa economic migration to economic powers is not special to South Africa. Mexicans go to the US because of the economy. Moroccans migrate to Spain because of economic reasons. Our thinking cannot be relative to SA borders. Economic migration is why Eastern Cape people overpopulate Cape Town. Yes, even in townships, you'd have conflict space of difference between classes who are from city and those who are migrating. Informal settlements spring up in Cape Town due to Eastern Cape migrants coming to Cape Town for work. The same dynamics are taking place across African borders, but with Cape Town, it's provincial borders. I think Gauteng also experience the same. All right. Do we have? All right. Right. I think. Final comments from my panel, then we can move on. Doctor, I'll take your final comments. Sir John, I'll take your final comment. And Dando, I'll take your final comment. And Alberto Cruz, I'll take your final comment on this topic of migration and its impact on South Africa as we wrap up this part. Doctor, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much. I'm not so sure there's going to be really comments, but maybe also questions. I think there was a question maybe in terms of response. There was a question asked by a gentleman from the Justice Cluster, I think, who said, what should South Africa do in terms of assisting other countries. I think it's a very difficult one. I think former President Thabo Mbeki, even a few days back, I listened to him. He still reiterated that South Africa cannot do much because problems of those countries need their own citizens to sort of attend to that. It's going to be a very difficult one for South Africa to be able to assist any other country that has its own internal politics and stuff. So it's quite a challenging one. But one other matter is that what do we mean by moral regeneration? I think that's what I wanted to say. And are we indeed regenerating, or we are predominantly degenerating? Why do white people who are non-tourists currently in South Africa seem to be enjoying privilege better than black citizens of this country? So where are the morals there? And one other thing that I want to say is that a good constitution that we have, I doubt that it has translated into equity, even equality, social justice, and even employment. Why do we have an unemployment rate increasing at the expense of a good constitution? By saying we have got a good constitution, are we saying we have addressed all our problems? I doubt. We can test that. We can test whether a good constitution translates into solving the problems that we have. And I don't think all these structural problems that we have should be narrowed down to illegal immigration. I mean, illegal migration. We might miss the point in the process. So what has really happened to morality? Why did we have Zondo Commission, for example? Were we there because of illegal migrants? No. What has happened to our own moral values as Africans, as South Africans, that we had to term whatever problems we have as state capture, for example? And I don't think there was much of foreign nationals in the process. At the core of it, it was about the own corruption that is happening in the country, irrespective of whether they're foreign nationals or not. So I think those are some of the morals and values that we need to still go back and test and see if at the end of the day, when we say we are proud South Africans, what do we mean by that? Looking at some of these challenges that are already there.
My closing remarks, I would like to touch based on the theme, the good, the bad, and the future Africa. In the good of Africa, I'm proud of the plank that has been established to boost the development and trade agreements within the continent, like countries like Tanzania and other neighboring countries are beneficiaries. Also, the new routes that you don't need a visa from France to fly to Cameroon. Today, you can just fly to Cameroon. So those are the benefits of the AU. And also the other thing on the good of Africa is that the bank, it will also help the continent not to borrow money from the World Bank and the IMF. So that, because if you don't pay back those countries, they come and take over your land. And also, if anyone that owns the land is the person who controls the minerals of that particular space. So this will help the African continent to grow also. And also what Burkina Faso is doing to eradicate the military forces bases in the continent, especially from the G8 countries, so that we minimize the illicit, illegal trades of these minerals that are stolen time and again and again. So the bad of Africa is that the poor leadership that invest on the offshores account at the expense of the money that was supposed to benefit the Africans. Hence, we experience migrants in the country. And also in our own countries, I think it is about time that those who are deployed in the government offices and they steal from the people and they misuse the funds of the state, they must be taken to prison and be charged with treason. And also to eradicate the bad governance. And then if you speak about the future of the continent has a promising future, the beautiful one, and it has a potential to become a superpower. But it requires a special kind of a leader that can go through the eye of the needle, that has emancipated itself to break away from the chains of mental slavery for her people, and also to get away from the dominance of colonialism. And the other thing is that all the regions that are in Africa, what they need to do is to adopt the China and the Singapore, the economic development policies. Thank you.
All right. We have two more, and then we're going to close the session. And Dando, are you on standby? Or Alberto da Cruz, are you on standby?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please go ahead. Quick
Thank you
word.
so much, ma'am. All right, so thank you again for this opportunity. In closing, I would say that I will start with social cohesion. When we speak about social cohesion, it is very important, number one, because I kept on hearing, as I've mentioned earlier on, you know, like when you love yourself or when you identify, identity is very important. Self-identity. Be proud of who you are. If you're a Zulu, be proud of that. If you're Nigerian, South African, be proud of who you are. Because when we speak about social cohesion, how can we have that without self-identity? Okay, so that's number one. And then number two, I would encourage our people or our African brothers and sisters that we are hosting in South Africa to respect the country that is hosting them. We have given them Ubuntu, so they should give us that back. At the moment, we do not see that. The scales are tipped where South Africa is expected to do more and they don't have to do much. All right. So then when it comes to building Africa and the unity of Africa, I notice that, as I've said, patriotism is mostly confused with xenophobic. We need to take introspection. There is nothing wrong to love your country, to love your people. And as I have said, charity begins at home. I love my people, whether you are a Zulu or whatever. This is the people that I know. This is the people that I have lived with since I was born. I start loving myself, loving my people before I extend to the others. And then finally, I would say that our African people, including us as South Africans, we need to really stand down on corruption, speak out. Okay. Once we do that, as we are trying here in South Africa to speak out to our government, we always criticize our government. We always do certain things to make sure that we're trying to keep them in check. But what I see in other African countries, instead of doing that, they run. Okay, and they want to bring in that type of mentality in South Africa. And we are saying, no, we stand our ground. And whether they like it or not, since we are hosting them, we're also going to teach them to stand their ground, to be patriotic, go back, fight for your country. So why? So that we can start now on equal footing. When you speak about unity, it is not fair to say we are uniting. However, I am the one that is expected as a South African to provide for you. What are you bringing on the table? So we need to start on equal footing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's Dando Denny from the Progressive Forces. And finally, Alberto da Cruz, your final thoughts? Is Alberto with us? Okay. Doesn't look like Alberto is with us. So what we are going to do is we take a recess for 5 minutes. Is that enough for everyone? Okay, I see.
Yes, we'll do.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Let's take a 5 minutes recess. It's 12:32 now. We will come back and we'll resume. Actually, let's just make it at exactly 12:40. So we'll make it 8 minutes. Let's come back at exactly 12:40, and then we resume the second session, where we will be talking human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism. And my panelists are Nicole Fritz, Campaign for Free Expression. Apologies, we're just going to take recess for a bit, Nicole. Glenad Dladla, Kingdom of Eswatini, Raz Hain from Activate, Peter Krill, Youth Leadership, an activist and humanitarian, and Alberto da Cruz from Mozambique will also be joining us. Just that recess at exactly 12:40. We will be back. That's now in 7 minutes' time. Thank you very much, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much once again for your patience and for joining us today. Those of you who have been with us since the morning, welcome once again to the Moral Regeneration Movement Africa Days Dialogue. And today's theme is the good, the bad, and the future of Africa. It's really an invite to reflect honestly and constructively on our shared past and collective future. So we want to try and use this platform to bridge divides and find common ground in building a more inclusive and self-sufficient and united Africa. And this is on the backdrop of us celebrating yet again Africa Day on the 25th of May, which happens annually. And as South Africa, just like the rest of the continent, we take time to observe that day. But I know as well that most of our African counterparts, in some countries, that day is a public holiday. They're like, yeah, but you guys, until you declare that day a public holiday, you're not very serious about this business of a united Africa. And they say you guys have lots and lots of holidays. You can even include this one and swap one and make this part of your holidays. So Africa Day is also known as African Freedom Day or African Liberation Day. It marks the foundation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. And in South Africa, this day is not really a public holiday, but we do observe and we run a lot of activities and conversations. And throughout the month, actually, of May, it's Africa Month. We get into these conversations. So we had our first panel on human rights, rather our first panel on migration. Yeah, that's what we had earlier on migration and its impact on South Africa. And yes, we were very emotive about that because we have certain concerns and we want things to move in a direction that can build a better Africa, not at the expense of a South Africa. But as we get into the second part, we are getting to talk about human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism. And my panel includes Nicole Fritz, Campaign for Free Expression, Gcina Dladla, Kingdom of Eswatini, as well as Peter Kriel, a youth leadership, as well as an activist and a humanitarian. And Alberto da Cruz will also be joining us, who is from Mozambique, spoke on issues of economic development earlier on that conversation. So as we get into this part of our discussion for this afternoon, the second panel, as I've already mentioned, human rights, gender transformation and Africanism. Well, human rights and gender transformation and Africanism are intertwined concepts with a significant implication for the African continent. Gender transformation as a movement towards equality and recognition of diverse gender identities is crucial for realizing human rights within African societies, and Africanism, with its emphasis on cultural values and social structures, plays a vital role in shaping how human rights are understood and implemented, particularly in relation to gender equality. With that said, let me welcome our first contributor to this conversation on our panel, Nicole Fritz from Campaign for Free Expression. Nicole, welcome and take it away.
Sorry. Thanks so much for that introduction. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm not going to be very long in my address, but let me say there is a lot to unpack in this particular panel. The topics that are included are broad-ranging. There's no way I'm going to be able to do justice to all those issues, but I wanted to start off by making the observation, which I think is potentially not obvious, But our whole system of human rights, the post sort of Second World War edifice that was built up around human rights, is based on this idea that we press our rights or we seek to claim our rights from government authorities. And generally, those rights are accorded in terms of citizenship, nationality. It means that if you are a foreign national in a country, a country that is not your own, that of which you don't have citizenship or nationality, it makes it very difficult politically to ensure that those rights are respected and adhered to. So obviously in a voting process, you are often, unless you have been granted citizenship over time or permanent residency, you're generally denied the right to vote. So often politicians are indifferent to you in the sense that they don't need to earn your votes. They don't need to do anything to earn your goodwill. And as we see around the world, and I think increasingly in South Africa, it becomes easy to look to deflect, to distract from bad political choices by making out that foreign nationals are the bogeyman. That's not to say that in a country like South Africa, where we face real pressing challenges and pressing socioeconomic challenges, obviously as a country, we can't afford to support huge numbers of, persons who have come into into our country without abiding by our law. That would mean that the delivery of basic services, which is already overstretched, would become even more subject to constraint and burden. That said, it has to be recognized that so much of what is flourishing in South Africa takes contributions and very rich contributions from foreign nationals who are here and who scrupulously adhere to our laws. And the kind of the quick sort of knee-jerk scapegoating that we see, which is becoming so much part of our political discourse, I think is really to be condemned. And I would just, to reflect on that, ask you to think back of last week when we saw that ridiculous attempt at sort of crass humiliation by the President of the United States in respect of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. South Africa's delegation, headed up by the President, was in Washington in part to try and dispel kind of disinformation, hatred based on lies, and the issues that was creating for South Africa, right? This idea of a fake genocide, the disincentive that would create for investment in this country. We know that we have a huge problem with crime. Our criminal justice system is hugely constrained. It is not up to what is required in order to meet our criminal justice system. But the idea that there is a genocide is nonsense. But we saw our political authorities trying to meet that challenge. We also see South Africa at the international level take on issues like the atrocities that are being undertaken in Gaza by Israel. It's gone to the International Court of Justice. It's insisted that the International Court of Justice should intervene, should recognize that there is a genocide that is happening, that is being perpetrated in Gaza. I mean, as somebody who's worked in human rights for many years now, I would say that what South Africa has done there on the international stage is to be applauded. It's, seeking to uphold and have recognized the dignity, the equality of Palestinian lives. But at the same time that South Africa is doing all of those things, you have a Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, who is in the last few weeks has issued a directive to the CEOs of entities which fall within his department, insisting that foreign nationals be dismissed, be gotten out, and failing implementation of that directive, the Minister Gayton McKenzie has said that he will get the CEOs of these entities out himself. Now, it's just bewildering and unthinkable to think that as we are on the international stage trying to meet kind of hatred which is destructive of our country, right, which has been caused by an ill-informed or perhaps a US president who is intent on platforming gross disinformation about our country. And as we take the International Court of Justice application, we are also having within our executive, within our top political leadership in this country, a minister who is making these threats, which are clearly unconstitutional and unlawful. Secondly, he has no lawful authority to issue these threats against CEOs. And thirdly, the fact is, if those directives were to be actioned, if foreign nationals who are here legally and entitled to work were to be dismissed under these directives, they could bring legal challenges and they would win. And the costs of that litigation and the damages that would be obtained would be at taxpayers' expense. It should also be said that that the minister's directive shows a profound ignorance of his own portfolio, right? The richness of South Africa's culture and artistic creation, and the reason why South Africa, in fact, continues to grip the global imagination as it does, is because of that richness of our arts and cultural contributions. And so much of that arts and culture and our sports achievements too have been attained because of the contributions and engagement with those beyond our borders. The idea that we could flourish artistically, culturally in the sports arena without that type of engagement and connection is antithetical. It's at odds with what these sectors are and what they do. But I do think the fact that you could have this directive issued by the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture shows the extent to which, as we face absolutely grave challenges in South Africa, real grave challenges, there is, unfortunately, and inclination on the part of some of our political actors to engage in kind of reckless, hateful scapegoating in order to distract from the real solutions that have to be put in place if we are to take South Africa forward. We are not going to be true to the Constitution and our own contributions at the global level to human rights, and I've referred to the International Court of Justice application relating to Gaza, if we are going to have people at the highest echelons in our executive making threats which are so damning and so potentially destructive of the rights of those who are here perfectly legally in our country. And I'll leave it there.
Stuff. Thank you so much for that, Nicole Fritz, for your contribution there. And okay, let me take another contribution, and then but I'm worried. Okay, you're gonna be leaving, so maybe let me get you to just speak to some elements based on your presentation. So you, in the context of free speech, okay, which is often under threat, how can civil society protect fundamental rights whilst also engaging constructively on issues like migration, exclusion, and you also touched on misinformation? Because I think for those of us who operate in the spaces, we have so much information, we interface with it on daily basis, and it's across all issues, whether it's on South Africa internal issues, whether it's issues that involve South Africa externally. How do we mitigate that? Because my friend, who is a parent at the same school as me, with the same kids in the same netball team and all of that, her perception of what's happening in Soweto and Alex is totally different. And then when I tell, I'm like, it's really not like that. It sounds like, and they can run and believe that information. We've seen how something like that could become a global campaign that requires the president to be in the Oval Office to explain that. And still, the people still insist that that's how things are. But then there's ordinary citizens who really believe that, and they literally, Alex is 5 minutes from them, with that misinformation. But how do we get ordinary citizens outside of ourselves, because of the work that we do, to actually to get this message across and engage at that level?
So thank you for that question, which I think is a great question. I mean, I think freedom of expression becomes so important in this context, right? And I mean, freedom of expression is often held up, and we certainly see it being held up by the kind of bosses of big tech, the likes of Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, saying that they're free expression absolutists. But I think, I mean, what we do need to do a better job of is kind of educating sort of the broader populace that, the kind of threats to free expression are not just of the kind, I mean, they absolutely still exist in terms of old order censorship, right? And so we're still seeing journalists, activists, whistleblowers being targeted by government authorities because they're speaking truth to power. And I mean, just in the last year, since the beginning of the year, for instance, we've seen a journalist killed in Mozambique. We've seen, another journalist in Zimbabwe detained for many months for nothing more than doing his job. So we do certainly have those old order threats. But I think we also have to recognize that threats to free expression look different in a world of big tech, in a world of digital platforms, right? And so some of those threats are about viral campaigns of disinformation, right? They're powerful actors. They look like, ordinary users of X or Facebook, but they may well be bots or persons paid to be putting out this misinformation. And the fact is that there's so little transparency, so little sort of internal, sort of oversight of these platforms by the public at large, that it's very difficult to understand, if these are genuine people who are laboring under misconceptions, or if in fact these are campaigns that are being deliberately set in place in order to drown out more credible voices. And I think, this is going to be one of the big challenges for us in South Africa and Africa more generally. We're typically not the markets that matter for the big tech platforms, right? So when Elon Musk bought X, for instance, he did away with all content moderation in Africa. The one office, Twitter office that was based in Africa was shuttered, it was closed. So I think one of the big battles for us on this continent, in respect of safeguarding human rights, not just free expression, but all rights, is going to be about sort of trying to ensure that we can hold these big tech platforms to account. The question is, we don't want to go in with, overly blunt legislation and laws, which can then be used by government authorities, for instance, to close down speech and expression, which obviously is really important to bringing to light human rights violations, corruption, etc. But we have to, I mean, this I think is going to be the big battle, is to find that balance of ensuring that there is proper oversight of these big tech platforms, which are wielding so much power that they in effect are sort of more powerful than individual countries, but not giving tools to governments that often are only too happy to have oppressive instruments in their hands in order to be able to shut down critics of government.
Okay. All right. So I have 2 questions for Nicole Fritz before she leaves. Bonang, where are the questions? Okay, Ntando, as well. It would have been great if you guys wrote them on the side, because then I could have been reading the questions and then she answers, because I'm trying to save time. Okay. Okay. Bonang's hand is up. Can we take Bonang and Ntando quickly? Bonang.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Auspenny. Nicole Fritz, I've got 2 questions for you. First of all, the first one is in regards with what the Gator McKenzie have said in Department of Sports, that foreign employees must be retrenched or removed. We believe that every department is guided by the Constitution, and our labor LRA is very clear. You employ a foreigner when you have proven without reasonable doubt that there is no South African with that qualification or skills. That one is very clear. And then if you are now saying those foreign nationals that are employed there without the first proper process not being followed, remember, before you get the work permit, an employer must prove to the government, to the Department of Labor, before 2023, that there's no South African, and the Department of Labor have to do that advertisement on the ESA services, that they will run also for 90 days, then issue the letter that the employer must take to the Home Affairs to be granted the work permit, so that the foreigner can be employed from outside South Africa. Now, we also as South Africans can put that in order, that where are the South Africans that are put together or paired with that foreigners that are employed in that department, that are transferring the skill to a South Africans as the law requires. The second one is in regards with
Bonang, I need to save time. So
please, the last one, I won't come again. The last
yeah,
one,
like
please,
I need to save time, because that point of, that's the department, those people are employed. Obviously, it's government. They've gone through the process. So please, can you
go through the process? If they
can you be precise so we can save time? Can I get your second question, please?
Thank you very much. The second one, I know Nicole Fritz have left the Helen Susman. I want to ask her, when is she going to advocate for SEP, South African Exemption Permits? Because that EP are the economic migrants from Zimbabwe. So we want South African exemption permits for her to do that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take a question from Dando as well, and then Nicole can just answer once collectively. Dando, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Penny. Okay, so question number 1. Nicole, can you please tell me your organization is, in terms of human rights, since you're working for human rights, is it human rights for South Africans or for foreigners? And question number 2, if you are advocating for all, whether foreigners or South Africans, can you tell me which cases have you undertaken to fight for South African human rights? And the third question would be, according to the Constitution, section, the rights to work, section 22 of our Constitution, where it speaks about the rights of South Africans, to have a right to work and emancipation. Are you considering that when you are tackling the issue of gating McKenzie? Because we are guided also. Have you looked at the rights to work for South Africans according to section 22? Thank you.
Okay, so another question for Nicole is my question to Nicole: as a white South African, do you believe part of justice is for white people to volunteer giving back land? Make it a project. Of course, we need, as a country, freedom of expression, but real change and justice in this country is around who owns the economy. And that economy is in the hands of white South Africans. And that land was taken with a great deal of unthinkable violence. Apartheid was the most violent system that benefited. Okay, Nicole, I'm giving you the next 3 minutes or so to respond to that, and then we move on.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me respond to some of these questions that relate to our criticism of Gaten McKenzie. I think what needs to be made clear is the minister, in issuing that directive, did not indicate that there were specific concerns that any of the persons that he was insisting be dismissed from their places of employment had obtained their work, their jobs, their employment spaces fraudulently, that they were not, hadn't got the requisite legal authorization. I think the other thing to recall, and I think this is being forgotten, is yes, obviously, one of the ways in which foreign nationals might work in South Africa is through obtaining work permits, and the requirements there are very onerous. They're very demanding. You have to show that that there isn't a South African who can perform this particular job. But I think that one also has to recall that there are other ways in which foreign nationals might be here legally in South Africa. They may be married to South Africans. They may have obtained permanent residency. The fact is that those people are also allowed to work legally in South Africa, right? If they weren't able to work in South Africa, they would then be dependent on the kind of services that we make available to persons who aren't able to afford to look after themselves. They would be a drain on the country and the services, the funds that we make available to provide to indigent people. As South Africans, as a community, those foreigners who are here legally, we want them to contribute to our economy, right? We want them to be able to purchase goods. We want them to be able to pay rent, to be able to contribute to our economy. And if they are here legally, we want them to be able to work, not at the cost of South Africans, but if they are left indigent without economic means and they are here legally, that means our social services bear a much more onerous weight. So I just want to make it clear that foreign nationals who are here, who are working, are not only here on skilled visas. They are also here, in some cases, perfectly legally for other reasons, because they have married to South Africans or they're permanent residents. On the question of what have we done for South Africans, I mean, across my career, most of the cases that I have undertaken have been in respect of, South Africans, whether it's been challenging various appointments that were made during the Zuma years that essentially were about advancing the state capture project. So whether it was appointing to the National Prosecuting Authority somebody who was clearly incompetent and not able to do his job, because Zuma needed him to be at the top of the National Prosecuting Authority so that no criminal prosecutions were being directed at people who had stolen huge amounts of funds from the public purse at the cost of the poor South Africans. We did so many of those cases, whether it was a case around ensuring that the social grant system and the company that was awarded the social grant system, again, to the benefit of the poorest South Africans, was having proper oversight. So it wasn't just a case of the minister handing that contract to her friends and getting all sorts of kind of corrupt paybacks. That was done for the benefit of the South Africans. I was in the Constitutional Court last week. It was around the Copyright Amendment Bill. That sounds really technical. But if we don't look to ensure that there is a proper balancing around our copyright laws so that poor South Africans are able to access educational content and disabled South Africans are able to access content like for the visually impaired, that is to their detriment. So by and large, the cases that I have done and been involved with have been for the benefit of South Africans. But I would also say this, when I have fought for the cause of foreign nationals, so in respect of the Zimbabwe exemption permits, Zimbabweans who've been here for 15 years, they've done so at every stage, they've been here perfectly legally. And our Minister of Home Affairs basically says, overnight, we're ending this. We're not giving you any notice. We're ending this. You either stay here as undocumented foreign national and the vulnerability of that, right? or you go back to a place that has basically been destroyed. When our laws can be used like that against foreign nationals, let me tell you, we as South Africans are all that much more vulnerable, because then there is no protection when the political leaders decide that we're the minority because we're women or we're disabled. And the fact is, when you act for a minority and you use the law as it is required to be used to protect them, we protect everyone, because we are a nation of laws. So I would say that. And then in respect of being a white South African, I mean, I absolutely, you know, I know the evils and the crimes that were committed under apartheid. We have a land reform and a land restitution process that, you know, must take place. Unfortunately, it hasn't been implemented as it should be. You know, and there must be pressure placed. One of the contributions that we've made is that we have been, you know, trying to push back against the disinformation that what is happening is, you know, the Expropriation Act is, the new Expropriation Act is intended to target white-owned land, you know, in a way that is illegal, that, you know, amounts to land grabs. And we've been putting out the information so one can better understand these processes.
We have to leave it at that, Nicole. Thank you very much for your time. And Nicole has to also go. Gcina Dladla from the Kingdom of Eswatini. Please, can you submit your presentation this afternoon? Gcina Dladla, your experience on policy making and now environmental leadership. Talk to us about some of those key lessons in that space. You have worked with, you know, you work in Swaziland, and talk to us around the issues of human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism.
Thank you, Penny. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity and for the invite. Quite interesting conversation this morning. I think maybe let me just start by contextualizing my short submission by just saying that I'm a son of a migrant labor who used to work here in South Africa in the Transvaal, looking after sheep. Later on, working in the mines and going even to the second generation. My grandparents, some of them actually were working here in South Africa. Just to underline the point that we as Africans, we are all cut from the same umbilical cord, one way or the other. But I think the main point I want to probably just drop, Penny, this afternoon, is the point that I think in what we seem to notice is what I would characterize as the declining promise of what we call democratic dividend across the globe, I would say, because all of us, we have always looked at democratic processes, democratic institutions, with the sole hope that systems and processes and entities that are built on democratic principles are there to deliver for Africans, for humanity. But what we tend to see across the globe, even here in Africa, is a worrying shift towards a belief on what I would characterize as strong man mentality, where we believe that strong people can save us from our troubles. I think my submission is to just underline one thing, that I think as Africans, there's only one way out of our situation. We really need to look inward, whether we are tackling problems that has to do with the environment, climate change, whether we are dealing with problems of unemployment, which are a huge driver in terms of our societal dynamics in Africa, whether you talk migration, whether you talk social ills, gender-based violence, all of those things. At the heart of it all is livelihoods, which have declined over the years. I think when we look at economies like the previous panel was saying, China, Singapore, some of these fastest growing economies, there's no way out for us as Africa other than looking inward. We really need to look inward, whether it's in policy formulation, which is what we are trying to drive on the environment sector. As I speak, I'm here in Pretoria trying to deal with issues of addressing hazardous waste in our subcontinent, in the SADC region, where we have seen a lot of people really losing their lives due to exposure to some of these hazardous waste that are illegally disposed in our communities, dump sites that are emerging in our townships. All of those things require us, particularly the young ones, to really rise up, look inward, and take charge of how we address all of these things. So the second point I would want to just emphasize is really to try and leverage on our strengths. The emerging architecture of things like the Africa Free Trade Agreements and things like that are things that we should all support, particularly to make sure we strengthen regional integration so that we can all resolve these issues that are holding us back as Africans. I was just watching before I came to join the webinar a map of countries with visa-free access to China. And no one, not even one country from Africa has that free access to China. Why? We really need to look at ourselves, look at our strength. Today we are talking artificial intelligence, we are talking rare earth minerals. All of these resources are here in Africa. But what is it that we need to do so that as we develop, we make sure that we infuse sustainability in all of these processes. We make sure that we protect our communities as we go to this extractive minerals industry. We make sure that communities where these mining operations are taking place are protected from pollution and all other emerging things that are coming. So all of these things we really need to make sure that we work around. But I think just the last 2 points I want to make before maybe I sit back to you, Penny, is just to say that for us, I think we have seen a huge liberation movement that delivered what I would call it the freedom and the democracy that we see in Africa. I think we really need to see a new form of movement, a movement that is going to usher in strategic development and partnerships on the African continent at a massive scale, whether we're talking transformative infrastructure across the continent. All of those things is the next movement that we really need to see so that we go beyond what we currently see, conflicts that are fueled by a proliferation of guns from foreign countries and endless wars across the African continent. All of those things would require us to really have a new trajectory of development so that we can really move forward and take our people to a new future. But just the last point I want to make is that I think there is no substitute for resilience, hard work, and excellence. I know that democracy sometimes has been mistaken for this utopia which will deliver all solutions to our problems. I think as Africans, we really need to go back to the basics so that we look at how we can reward excellence in our society. If you look at China, more than 1 billion people, you wouldn't say those people can achieve what they've achieved if Chinese people were not determined to really deliver a kind of society which is beginning to emerge at a global level right now. I think that's a kind of motivation and resilience that we need to build and move beyond entitlement, move beyond what the previous generation of independence has delivered for us, but take the trajectory forward in order for us to really address most of our problems, including issues of the environment and climate change. Thank you very much, Auspendi.
All right, thank you very much, Gina Dladla, for your contribution. Let me see if we have any questions or comments for Glenna on the site? All right. Do we have okay, we've got a hand. Is Chief Clive? The hand is up. Should we take that before I move on to my next speaker? Chief Clive, are you there? No? Okay, they're not. All right, so I am going to move on to, yeah, all right. Ooh, Chief Clive,
Yeah.
Mfela Mbembe, your line is a bit bad. Let's
Yes.
try again. Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, much better. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to come in. And thank you, Danenkosi, for coming in and Bayete to that point. Africa, my take is that we are facing a very serious challenge. Other than just all these challenges that we are facing today, human rights, inequality, the wars in Africa, everything, it goes back to the scramble for Africa. It goes back to the issue of the Berlin Conference of 1800. Decisions that were taken to colonize Africa. This is what actually influenced even the kind of laws that we design. We are talking about the constitution in South Africa today that we are saying is the best constitution in the world or in Africa. But we are sitting with a very serious problem because that constitution, it is not even informed by us. It is not even whatever that is decided on that constitution. It's informed by those who are the masters in upon our laws. This is what is worrying. You go back to the issue of how Africa was captured, the triangular trade. The laws that were decided, even after the triangular trade, after the founding of the League of Nations, it affected Africa. Africa is not recognized as a country and as a continent. South Africa equally, from the 1910, the Union of South Africa, it is not a country. It is a corporation. So these laws, how this everything was imposed upon us by the colonizers, it is what is causing us all these problems today. So alluding to the fact that Africa needs to change the way it thinks, the way we have almost everything. All commodities are here. But this is the most struggling continent than any continent in the world. And it means now we need to bring resistance in terms of what should be imposed. It is time that Africa awakens and then start dealing with its own issues. And nobody should be determining or monopolizing any of the laws that governs Africa. So the laws that have been brought forth by the colonizers, even our presidents, they are controlled. The powers, yes, they have their own flaws. I'm not actually protecting anyone here, but they are controlled. There's an upper hand. This is what is creating problems around Africa. Human rights. We spoke about the human rights, but the same human rights cannot be activated fully as long as there's an upper hand. So maybe we need to restructure the manner in which Africa is run and is controlled and governed per se. So I just wanted to allude to that fact that all these challenges, we coming across them because the colonizers have imposed laws that controls Africa, even its resources. As long as we can remove that, or as long as we remain with that, then we are sitting with a serious problem. That's our biggest challenge and our biggest enemy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that contribution, Chief Clive, there. I'm going to hand over now to my next speaker is Peter Kriel. Peter is joining us here where I am in Bram. He is a youth leader and an activist and a humanitarian. Peter, talk to us about human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism from your point of view, especially as a young person in South Africa with some of the challenges that we faced with.
Thank you first of all for having me and for giving me the opportunity to speak. So I'm just going to run briefly through all of the points that we've mentioned, starting with human rights violations. As a humanist, I believe no regime, left or right, justifies torture, censorship, or state violence. Human dignity is very important. It's non-negotiable, from prisons to protest lines. LGBTQ plus rights are human rights, and that is a full stop, whether it's in Africa, in Europe, or in Asia, South America. No human being is illegal in Africa because we have to treat migrants with humanity and not hostility. We have to remember that at the end of the day, all Africans are from the same continent. So it's not a kind of immigration. Let's talk about the migration to South Africa and the stirs that it causes. Migration is a symptom of failed African leadership. It's not a disease. Exploited migrants and poor South Africans have much more in common than the government leaders keeping poor South Africans and exploited Africans in those conditions. Migrants and South Africans are not enemies. They are both victims of inequality. Xenophobia is and always has been cowardice dressed up as patriotism. In Africa, we need solidarity among Africans, among the oppressed, not war, because war, at the end of the day, pushes humanity further away from what keeps us similar. Minority groups in Africa, every culture and race identity in Africa deserves respect, whether it's the smallest of nations in South Africa or the people in Middle East Africa. Doesn't matter. Humans remain human. A truly just society protects the unpopular and the forgotten. We have to listen to the voices of people that have not been given a mic for too long. We have to speak alongside the disadvantaged and the people that live in poverty, that live in inequality, and that bear the constraints and the weight of colonialism as well as apartheid. Youth leadership is very urgent. People always speak about the youth need to take the future into their own hands. That sounds so metaphysical. The future is so far away. You should act now. The present is where the future happens. The continent belongs to the youth, and the youth should take it, they should shape it, and the youth should lead. The old guard is falling. And we have to remember, after the end of colonialism, a lot of these African leaders inherited Western economies, Western philosophies, Western systems of thought. In order to revive something that has been broken, you don't give it a paint job. You burn it down and you rebuild it to something new. Organize across borders, across languages, and across movements. If you're under 30 and silent about inequality, about the problems Africans are facing, you are part of the problem and you're betraying your own future. Uniting Africa. Borders were drawn by colonizers. Tear them down with solidarity and vision. A united Africa is very dangerous. The world doesn't fear a screaming or angry Africa. It fears a united African population with a shared vision and destiny. A united Africa must be democratic, it must be secular, inclusive, and not just a big flag or a bunch of slogans. Pan-Africanism must serve the people and not the presidents. For too long, the African population across borders, across the regions and towns have been propagated to turn the weapon towards one another, when in fact, the global order, Western economies, the colonialization and apartheid of Africans have held back not just Africa, but also the world. Because at the end of the day, if you solve Africa's problems, you solve the whole world's problems. Because humanity, at the end of the day, with its flaws and with all its beauty, you originated here in Africa. So fixing Africa is like looking inward, it's fixing yourself. And by fixing yourself, doing that introspection, you fix not just Africa, you unite it, and you fix the world. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you there, Peter Krill. So you represent a younger voice on this panel. What does meaningful gender transformation look like in modern African leadership beyond policy? You said if you're 30 and you're not using your voice to advance causes, you're betraying your future. But a lot of young people will say at 30, I haven't really figured it out and I don't even know what shapes my voice. But when it comes to issues of inclusivity and it being, a lived experience, not just legislated, because also another thing, as you say, you're under 30 and you're doing that, but there will be a lot of young people who come from so-called previously disadvantaged who are the ones who are adding their voice. You're probably one of the few young people, of white descent from part of your Afrikaans, right? Yes, and you're using your voice like that. But I'm sure people are like, what has gotten into this young man? How does that happen? How can young people add their voice and really bring it from a lived experience point of view?
So I started speaking out about inequality, about power, and about systems of power about a year ago, openly on social media. And I've grown to around 300,000 followers. And I want to use my platform not to speak to Africans or to speak to you as an African woman. I want to speak with and alongside Africans, to remind Africans of their shared power in their human history. Because at the end of the day, no savior is coming for Africa. Africans need to save themselves. And by doing that, you bring in equality, you bring in democracy. To add on to gender roles, we need to bridge the gap of inequality between men and women. Women are the most powerful beings on this planet. Women gave birth to all life on earth, and we need to respect women, and we need to bring them into social society more inclusively. Speaking about rights like LGBTQ and so forth, Ubuntu is all about unity. It's all about teaching the fellow human about sharing your vegetation, for example, with your neighbor, because that's the human thing to do. We need to remind men from a young age that we need to respect women and we need to respect other people's rights to express themselves. Just as humanity expresses itself in shades of color, being racist denies that beautiful expression of humanity. So, denying females their power or people who express themselves differently than you, you're denying a different but beautiful expression of humanity. And we need to be inclusive and we need to advocate for that. If you have 5 followers, 10 followers, keep doing it every single day. Speak for people who don't have a voice. You'll grow your platform and you'll inspire other people to also do so.
Well, they say our young people are not interested. Here they are. Okay, let's bring on, do we have any questions? We love PK. That's all you have to say, brother Tunzi and everyone. But how do we duplicate and have more PKs? Yeah. Like, what are your peers doing and saying about some of these issues? Are young people interested in issues of human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism?
I think the youth is very much interested in their future, but we've been denied the participation in creating our own future. Politicians, people in power and structures of power need to allow young voices from all communities to come in, to give their perspective, to debate about policy, to fight about it, to argue, and to bring that thing that we all have in common to grounds, the ability to reason and articulate and debate. And by doing so, by giving the youth the right to participate, which they've been denied, right? You create a more inclusive and collaborative society. But also, the youth has been drowned by television and by social media, by dances and by food and by entertainment and alcohol, when we've really not looked at the dangers of alcohol, of excessive partying. And we need to not be distracted anymore. Kids from a young age need to see poverty. They need to experience it. They need to see, and they need to be empathetic towards it. Because only when you're empathetic towards a person who's suffering or who's being oppressed, can you try to understand what it's about.
All right. Is Rushen still going to speak? That is the question. Is Rushen, he's spoken. Rushen spoke earlier on. He hasn't contributed to this part, to this part of the panel. Yes, they're going to do that. So, and then we also have Asona Gunwana. So, Rushen, please we can move on to you if you are ready to make your submission.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, I think you are. Let's.
Okay. Thank you. You know, guys, what Steve Biko said, right? Yeah. Anyway, so I have over, like, let's say 10 years of experience within South Africa's civil society spaces, youth empowerment spaces. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Activate. It's a network funded by DG Uray. It basically assists with training young people, similar to Yali. Yali was shut down due to US aid stopping to fund Yali. Yali is based in, SADC was based in Pretoria, at UNISA, etc. So I was also at Yali.
Much better, much better.
Sorry, I was just saying, so I'm not speaking on behalf of Activate. Activate is a network established through DG Murray's funding. It used to be a other network. Anyway, so we're just wanting to touch on young leadership in Africa. I would like to make an example of Zuleika Patel, and then I also would like to make an example of Mayala Lux, and then I would also like to make
please can you use your mic the way you've just been using it just now? It's more audible.
It's from Soweto. I don't know his name.
Ntlantla Lux.
And then we also had Zuleika Patel, who was protesting at the schools for her hair, with the issue with the afros. Then we also have Ala Salah, who was the lady that was standing on top of the car with the Sudanese revolution in 2019. Now we have Ibrahim Traore, who's 37 years old. Mr. Malema is not as young anymore. We also have someone like Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia, who is actually 48 at the moment. So then we in Senegal, we have a leader like Bassirou Faye, who's currently at 45. So we just analyzing, and then we also have Bobby Wine, right? Bobby Wine is in Uganda, and he has a lot of issues with Museveni. But then there's also whereby we can see how Bobby Wine is sometimes supported by what we would identify as people that are coming from the global finance cabal, right? Finance capital. And Bobby, as much as he seems progressive because of his linkages with those networks, it sheds a different light on who is actually being funded by, or etc. Similar to let's say the other day we saw the PA, Mr. Gaten McKenzie, having his rally in PE, and we saw Rob Hersov, right, who's a big South African capitalist, like fully kitted in a PA suit, right? So now we're also asking who's actually behind the PA, right? And we understand that
Mr. Mackenzie came into the game through Invictus, who was his consortium, and they did a consulting for green fields or gold fields within the mining sector. So who is the capitalist funders behind people like Mr. Gayton Mackenzie, and what is the agenda of constantly scapegoating foreign nationals for all the issues that South Africa faces, right? South Africa is the most unequal country in the world in terms of Gini coefficient, meaning we have a super, super rich elite group in the country, and then we have the super, super poor. And we find that we are not really addressing the ownership of the economy, right? And the ownership of land. Because when land is reformed, it means housing and accommodation will become more affordable for the working class people. So they I actually was asked to speak on this platform yesterday, so I didn't actually get enough time to prepare a layout for what we want to speak about. But reflecting on Africa Day, 25 May 1963, when the leadership got together in Addis Ababa and signed the charter of the OAU. We had the Monrovia group, and then we also had the Casablanca group, right? So the Casablanca group was led by Kwame Nkrumah, and Kwame Nkrumah wanted Africa to federalize immediately. So he wanted to do away with borders immediately, but the Monrovia group said no, we cannot integrate immediately due to different forces operating within Africa. And to say that Africa's leaders just forfeited liberation is wrong. They killed Patrice Lumumba through CIA operations, right, in the Congo. They killed people like Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. Chris Hani in South Africa was killed. So Mr. Nkomo in Zimbabwe that had a better kind of an alternative to a free Zimbabwe. So to just claim that Africa's leaders were always going to compromise, it's wrong. We need to look into how the West, the global North, has constantly compromised Africa's leaders. And we must understand from the perspective of Berlin, this year we held an event in Cape Town to celebrate and to commemorate Adwa, the Battle of Adwa. We also commemorated the Battle of Salt River, which took place in Cape Town in 1510, when the Bushman people actually killed Francisco de Almeida, who was one of the most powerful generals in the world at that time. It's 1510. But that's within the context of like I said, Berlin Conference. And then we also need to remember the Nama genocide in Namibia, in the Namibia area. And then we have to contextualize that with, let's say, the kingdom of Mapungubwe, right? So, which is currently in modern day Limpopo, Zimbabwe, what's the Mpumalanga area. So, in that context, we can't say that we had borders. Even within the SADC region, there was one economy, one kind of a social system whereby people were trading with each other without this extensive space of difference that was created by Europe. You know, so that is basically just some of the things I wanted to touch upon, and the issues of human rights and the issues of wealth redistribution, and that South Africa is a big brother to Africa due to infrastructure, due to an industrial base. We cannot say that, yeah, when is we're gonna get South African permits to go to Zimbabwe or wherever, due to the economics, right? There is not the same level of income opportunities across the African continent, and this is also the legacies of colonization, right? And today we're dealing with issues of decolonization, and decolonization isn't just within the context of politics, but we have to consider decolonization within the context of psychological, spiritual, economic decolonization, like the author that passed away yesterday. He wrote a book about decolonizing the mind, right?
The mind,
But
yeah.
perspective. So
Okay, we have to make it land there. So we are going to thank you very much, Rashain, for that. Alberto the Cruz, if you are on standby, or I'm gonna go straight to Esona Gunwana YMCA Soweto. Esona, are you on standby?
Yes, I am. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yeah, you're audible. So you can take it away.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be focusing on young leadership in Africa, as I'm very excited in tackling this topic because of my involvement in the YMCA. And again, I'm Esona Gunwana. I'm from the organization YMCA Soweto, and I also serve as the youth representative of YMCA South Africa. So I'll talk about the rise of young leadership in Africa and what we can learn from this phenomenon. And Africa is experiencing a significant demographic shift, with the population expected to double by 2050, and over half of that population will be under 35 actually. And this demographic brings both opportunities and changes, and we'll visit those opportunities and challenges shortly. And before that, we'll dive into the key trends in young leadership. Well, young Africans are increasingly involved in various issues, including climate justice, conflict transformation, food security, and human rights, using digital technologies to mobilize, organize, and advocate for change. And this brings increased activism from young people. And we also bring diverse leadership styles, where young people in Africa are showcasing diverse leadership styles, from entrepreneurship to activism and to community organizing. They are promoting self-entrepreneurship, creating startups, and participating in their communities. And also we note that education is crucial for empowering young Africans. Initiatives like the Black Girls Dream Initiative, for example, aim to close the education gender gap and promote girls' education. And the challenges that we face in, well, the rise in the young leadership in Africa is, well, young leaders face limited access to funding, resources, mentorship. We also lack experience. Young people lack experience and expertise needed to effectively address complex challenges. Older generations may resist new ideas and approaches, making it difficult for young leaders to implement change. Corruption and poor governance can undermine the efforts of young leaders and limit their impact also. Young people may face barriers to participating in decision-making processes and leadership positions, and skills gap, where young people may need to develop specific skills such as leadership, communication, problem solving to effectively lead and drive change. And also cultural and social barriers, where cultural and social norms may limit opportunities and recognition available to young leaders, particularly women and marginalized groups. But then we also have opportunities within that space where young leaders can bring new ideas and approaches to addressing those challenges and driving change. Young leaders are often driven by a sense of purpose and passion, which can inspire and motivate others. Young leaders can promote diversity and inclusion, bringing different perspectives and experiences to the table. And young leaders are often similar with digital technologies, which can be leveraged to drive innovation and change. Global connectivity also, where young people can connect with others around the world, accessing knowledge, resources, and networks that can support their work. empowerment and leadership development, where young leaders can develop their skills, capacities, and becoming effective leaders and change makers. And through these spaces, we also have to recognize that we need to empower young people for inclusive governance, where we encourage young people to participate in decision-making processes, leadership positions, and to foster more inclusive and political environment. We also need to focus on capacity building, where we provide training and capacity building programs to equip young leaders with the necessary skills and knowledge to drive positive change and mentorship. And also, the lessons we should learn within this is that we need intergenerational partnerships, where we foster partnerships between young and older leaders is essential. This collaboration can help bridge the gap between experience and innovation, leading to more effective solutions. We can also empower youth with the right skills, knowledge, and opportunities that can unlock their full potential. This includes providing access to education, vocational training, and employment opportunities. And we, as young people, we need to leverage technology to drive change. I'll end there. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much there. We've got some comments. You can also share your comments on the slideshow. Thank you for my coffee. You're on camera there. Thank you. Okay, so I think let's get to the next speaker, and then we can have a if we have question and answers and comments, we'll do that collectively. Is Alberto da Cruz still with us? Doesn't seem that way. And that was Esona Kunwana from YMCA talking about the importance of young leadership. The topic is around human rights, gender transformation, and Africanism. Okay, so I think with that, let me just read some of the comments. And I don't know if they're for now or they were from earlier. Is Raz saying still going to speak? I remember Rina. Well said, PK. We need more young people like you in this country. Keep talking and keep uniting other young stars. Brother Tunzi, is economics the ultimate basis for dignity of people in today's world? Is it okay to consider economics as science rather than a subject of morality? I think, Brother Tunzi, you can expand on that, because unless if somebody wants to, engage you on that. Can the speaker speak straight into the point, please? Okay. Ras spoke so much sense, but was cut off. That is not true. I try to time everyone according to the same time. Maybe you just enjoyed him more. But a white upstart voice, PK, gets platform to be a motivational speaker. Andra, I'm not so sure if I agree with that. White liberal voices are still getting more platform than clear, nuanced Pan-African insights, even more. Maybe you need to expand on that. What is the criteria of Africa unity? EU got Copenhagen criteria. Please, Bonang, maybe you can expand on that as well, because after all, this is a dialogue. I don't think there's people who have the answers, and others must ask the question. I think it should be like, you want to make a comparison of how Africa unity should be like based on what you understand about the EU got Copenhagen criteria. Because I think that's one of the things, I don't remember who spoke to, that we have this big man, big brother mindset where somebody must be the leader and somebody must have the answer. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why we're here, because those people that we believe that they're the leader and they have the answer, they're the ones who end up being in situations where they're negotiating on our behalf. And before we know it, they're the ones who are running with the riches, and we're left with nothing because we abdicate our citizen responsibility to them. Yes, there is holding them account, but there's also being accountable to ourselves in the smallest in the biggest form, and it shouldn't be about what title and position. And because people are on the panel, it doesn't mean that they have the answers. It just means that they have spent time on a particular subject and they're willing to engage on that. And you can also share your thoughts on whatever it is that you want to share. Pan-Africanism is, as envisioned by its founders, is rooted in unity, liberation, and empowerment. That included economic independence, building independent economies, and reduce independency. How are we going to achieve that? Excuse me. When everyone is flocking one area, e.g. South Africa. I think it's a very interesting one. I think it was Raz who spoke about the two groupings who met at the formation of African Unity, who came with two different varying ideologies, hoping to achieve the same goal. And the reality is, you know, are we constantly looking back at what those and how has it worked? And then when it comes to economic independence, the reality of you know, what the foreign countries, what they've been able to do, colonizers been able to do on the continent has taken a lot away from the very countries. And also some of the countries, the big brother leaders kind of like gave away a lot of that. Are we going to be able to even achieve this economic independence that we talk about in this lifetime? You know, I know I've heard of some leaders who are saying, look, when it comes to Pan-Africanism and us achieving economic independence, we're in big trouble because it doesn't look like we're going to get there. But I can tell you one thing that's exciting that's happening as well today is that South Africa is running for the presidency of the African Development Bank. We don't know what that might yield the results of, and it's a woman who's going for that position from South Africa. Zambia has had their chance, but I can tell you, when we talk to gender transformation, there is talk, you know, in Addis as we speak right now, that they're saying a woman from South Africa again leading. Why is it South African women are always the ones who want to lead? You know, no, we don't want that. And all sorts of things are happening there. But it's what we're trying to have a conversation about here, and we're looking for different contributions and solutions. So I think if failing to see that there's no one else who wants to comment, I'm going to go back to Dr. Alois, because your work is around Africanism, right? And earlier on you were talking about migration, right? But this Africanism that we're talking about, some are saying it's Africa. We should focus more on Africanism than Pan-Africanism. Is there a difference? And then if we make reference to the two varying groups, you know, in 1963 who met up, you know, how do we forge from there to where we are right now to really achieve the Africa we want now?
No, that's a very difficult question, and like you rightfully said, I don't think there's anyone with answers. But my interest was going to be to focus on education, because I think I come from a center that deals with higher education studies, and I think if I don't speak to that, I would be expelled from where I belong. But I want to start right down at our basic education.